All right, good evening. I now call this work-study session at the Orange Unified School District Board of Education to order. The time is 5:01 p.m. Madam Clerk, do we have a quorum?
We do.
Okay, thank you. And at this time, I'd like to invite everyone to stand, if you're able, for us to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. The next item is the adoption of the agenda. Are there any requests, changes, or corrections to the agenda for the board or the staff? Hearing none. I'd like to have a motion to adopt the agenda, please.
Motion to adopt.
Thank you. Trustee Thomas. Second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Trustee Vane. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is adopted. Madam Clerk, we do have public comment. Can we go through that process? As a reminder, the work-study session, in accordance with the Brown Act, speakers may only address items that are on tonight's agenda. So speakers must have submitted a comment card prior to the meeting, and the speaking is determined by the total number of speakers and may range from 1 to 3 minutes per person. Time may not be yielded to another speaker. I also ask that all speakers direct the comments to the board. Okay. Madam Clerk.
We have 2 for item 3A and 1 for 3B.
Okay, thank you. Who's the first person coming up? 3A.
Are we going to do the presentation first?
Is that what we're going to do? We're going to do the
Today
public
we're
comments first.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. Thank you. So first we have Graciela Magaña, and after her is Cassie Bravo.
Thank you.
Good evening, more members of the school board and superintendent. My name is Graciela Magaña, and I'm the community site lead at Esplanade Elementary School. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today about why community schools are so important to our families and our students. Community schools are more than a place for academics. They are hubs of support, trust, and opportunity. They bring resources directly to families who need them most and remove barriers that often stand in ways of students' success. When families feel supported, students show up ready to learn, and that is exactly what we are seeing at our schools. This work is made possible by the dedication of our community leaders. They build relationships to connect families to resources and create a welcoming space where parents feel seen and heard. Their work has made real difference in the lives of our families by providing access to food, services, and basic family needs. We have also seen the power of strong partnerships. Mother's Nutritional Center has served over 500 families, ensuring that families have access to nutritious food and helping support the overall well-being of our students. Another impactful partnership is with the Mexican Consulate. They have visited our school site 4 times and have provided critical services such as passports and identification cards through these visits. They have served over 1,000 people. The impact is so significant that families came to our school not only from our local community, but from Las Vegas, Bakersfield, and Riverside. This shows the level of trust families have in our school as a safe and reliable place to receive services. Community schools work because they meet families where they are and respond to real needs. They strengthen the connection between schools and communities and support the whole child and the whole family. I encourage you to continue supporting and investing in community schools because when we invest in families, we invest in our students' success. Thank you.
Good evening, board members and Superintendent Menares. Today I would like to discuss an essential resource in our community that has been essential in bringing people together and supporting families, community schools. Specifically, I'd like to highlight the wonderful initiatives at Esplanade Elementary School, which serves as a shining example of how community schools can positively impact our neighborhoods. One of the most incredible resources Esplanade offers is our monthly free farmers markets. This event not only brings fresh produce to our community, but also serves over 100 families each month. In addition to the monthly farmers market, our community school has stepped up by providing a dry food pantry. This pantry is a lifeline for families in need, ensuring that no one goes hungry. Further, in these challenging times with ongoing crises affecting many communities across the country, Esplanade serves as a hub for cultural connection by partnering with the Consulado Mexicano. By having offered their services on campus 4 times this year, the school has directly assisted around 1,000 people, averaging 250 guests at each event, and hopes to continue to serve more. It's not only about providing paperwork, it's about connecting families with essential services and fostering a sense of identity and support within our community. The holiday season can be particularly challenging for many families. Recognizing this, Esplanade has taken the initiative to ensure that families in need receive Christmas gifts, Thanksgiving meals, gift cards, clothing, and personal necessities through donations and organizations. The impact of these efforts cannot be understated. It brings a sense of joy and relief, letting families know that they are not alone and reminding them that their community cares. Moreover, Esplanade has a computer lab and a printer in the Parent Center that are open for family use. In today's digital age, access to technology is crucial. For many, this lab has been a vital resource. I've seen numerous families utilize this Parent Center. In conclusion, community schools like Esplanade are essential in today's community. They not only meet immediate needs, but also lay the groundwork for a stronger, more connected district. By continuing to support and invest in our community schools, we ensure that the invaluable services that they provide, such as access to food, educational resources, cultural connection, and emotional support, will continue to thrive for generations to come. Thank you.
And then we just have one for 3B. Are we doing that one now as well? Okay, David Imboden.
Hi there. Good evening, School Board Trustees and Superintendent Menares. My name is David Imboden. I'm the president of the McPherson Education Foundation. For those new to the district, the foundation was formed at the same time as the McPherson Magnet School opened in 1997. We were incorporated to ensure the math, science, and technology focus of the school had the funding necessary to succeed. For over 25 years, McPherson has been the leader in innovation in education at Orange Unified. We first donated the Earth Lab, a continuously growing community garden for hands-on student learning. We built out the first elementary STEM lab that's been copied and built upon in most elementary schools in the district. We purchased hundreds of iPads to ensure one-on-one devices on all our kindergarten and second graders before the district went to one-on-one devices for all students. We've upgraded all the middle school science classrooms to state-of-the-art labs. We've brought both C-STEM and Project Lead the Way into the McPherson curriculum, award-winning science programs that are now on multiple campuses across the district. We purchased large-screen TVs for every classroom before the district installed them for all the schools across the district during COVID. We put on an amazing STEAM night every year for over 1,000 students, free of charge. Many of you have attended in the past. McPherson Education Foundation has donated over $1.5 million to the school and the district. And this hasn't just benefited over 3,000 students at McPherson, but it's also been an incubator for successful programs across the district. I'd like to say that I'm halfway through my McPherson residency. My oldest is in 8th grade. My youngest has 8 more years to go. When I first arrived in 2017, Dr. Irvin had a vision of an outdoor science lab for teachers to do messy science experiments, for middle schoolers to have a place to hang out, and for elementary teachers to take their kids out of the classroom environment on a nice day. We started fundraising right away. When COVID hit and Dr. Irvin moved to the district, our funding went to other priorities. As part of his role in the district, he helped with the facilities master plan effort. He made sure that outdoor collaboration spaces were incorporated in every campus. For the last 4 years, we've raised over $150,000 for an outdoor science lab and are ready to partner with the district to make this a reality. For the last 2 years, I personally reached out, along with Dr. Godsey, the principal, to the district staff to move this project forward. Earlier this year, I even presented a grant opportunity to the district to bring in additional funds. Unfortunately, we still have no project budget and no design concept. We also lost that grant opportunity, and of course, every delay increases construction costs and puts the opportunity out of reach. We've seen the district partner with the Kenyon Education Foundation to rebuild the gymnasium at Kenyon High School, and Villa Park Home and School League to build out a track at Villa Park Elementary. I have parents that are disappointed that the funds they've donated over the years won't be used to benefit their children. I fear this is going to hinder future fundraising efforts. We encourage the district to help McPherson Education Foundation to build out an outdoor science lab on our campus, as conceived in the facilities master plan, and their parents and staff have dreamed about for years. Just like many of the other enhancements that McPherson Education Foundation has added to the McPherson Magnet, this could be an example for the rest of the district's campuses to follow, adding functionality and beautification to all of our schools. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the speakers. We just want to make it clear that because we are not taking any action this evening, that's the reason why we allowed all three of the speakers to come up this evening. Moving forward, we're going to move on to 3A, Community Schools presentation, and I'd like to bring the attention to Mr. Gonzalez, Assistant Superintendent of Student Services and Community Engagement.
Good evening, Board President Glass, trustees, and Superintendent Monares. This evening, you'll receive a comprehensive update on Orange Unified's California Community Schools Partnership Program. The responsibility for community schools was transitioned to the Student Support and Community Engagement Division beginning this school year, a move that truly aligns with our core mission. As you know, our division, which encompasses student and community services, special education, and expanded learning programs, is committed to fostering an environment where every student is supported, feels a strong sense of belonging, and is empowered to reach their fullest potential. Through collaborative efforts with families, staff, and community partners, we strive to offer a full array of services and supports that nurture academic achievement, personal growth, and lifelong success. Getting to know and working with those involved in community schools has been a personal privilege for me, as their efforts make life-changing differences in our students and our families. We look forward to sharing our progress and future plans to better support our school communities. This evening, Executive Director of Student and Community Services, Heriberto Angel, will begin our presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Good evening, Board President Dr. Glass, distinguished school board members, Superintendent Dr. Menares, Executive Cabinet, staff, and our community. My name is Eddie Angel, and I'm the proud Executive Director of Student and Community Services. Tonight, you're going to hear from the diverse voices that bring our community schools to life. We are excited to share both the progress we have made and the promise these schools hold for the future of our district. Community schools are more than an initiative. They transform our campuses into hubs of support where students and families have access to resources, opportunities, and partnerships that remove barriers to learning and foster success.
Good evening, board members. Good evening, Dr. Superintendent Monares. My name is Karime. I serve as a community lead at California Inspire Academy. As we begin tonight's presentation, we want to share the objectives that will guide our discussion. First, we will understand the current state of community schools implementation across Orange Unified, where we started, where we are now, and where we are headed. Second, we will highlight the achievements and the positive impact on students and families. This includes the way our community schools have become hubs of support, providing resources and opportunities that strengthen student success and family engagement. Finally, we will outline the next steps to strengthen systems and ensure long-term sustainability. This is about building coherence, deepening partnerships, and planning for the future so that community schools remain a cornerstone of equity and access in our district. Thank you.
Good evening. I am Deborah Gonzalez, the Community Site Lead at Palmyra Gate Magnet. Before we begin, we would like to share tonight's agenda. We'll start with an introduction to community schools and their purpose in Orange Unified. Next, we'll review the history of our implementation journey, followed by the current state of our work. We'll then highlight some of the great successes and positive impacts we've seen so far, and share data and stories that demonstrate the impact on students, families, and communities. Finally, we'll outline our next steps, which focus on strengthening systems, deepening collaboration, and ensuring long-term sustainability. Thank you.
Good evening. I am April Liu. the Teacher on Special Assignment for Family and Community Engagement. The California Community Schools Partnership, CCSPP, was created to help schools partner with community, agencies, and local government to align resources that improve student outcomes. Community schools integrate academics, health, and social services, youth development, and family engagement into a unified system of support. This whole child approach addresses barriers to learning, respond to family needs, and mitigate the academic and social impacts of emergencies. The model is built on four foundational pillars: integrated student support, family and community engagement, collaborative leadership and practices, expanded learning time and opportunities. In 2021, the legislature passed the Community Schools Partnership Act, and in 2022, expanded funding and extended the program through 2031. The California Community Schools Framework, approved in January 2022, guides, design, and implementation statewide. Our vision for community schools is rooted in equity and whole child support. We are aiming to close academic gaps, address mental health, wellness needs, strengthen family engagement, and expand access to community resources. Our why is simple, yet profound: to create schools that are more than classrooms, schools that serve as hubs of support where every student and family has access to the resources, relationships, and opportunities they need. Thank you.
Hi, my name is, good evening. My name is Karina Tamayo. I'm the community lead at Jordan Academy. The community schools model is built in 4 pillars, and I briefly talk about each of them. But I want to highlight that a school without these 4 pillars might still have a strong community, but these 4 pillars are essential to support the whole child and strengthen family, community, and partnership in a community school. So our first pillar is integrated student support systems. This, we can see this in our district through our school counselors. Our school counselors provide ongoing mental health and wellness support for students and families. Other way that we see this in our district is through our food pantries, free uniforms, and other services that are offered through our community resource centers and through our community partners, ensuring we address barriers to learning. The second pillar is expanded learning time and opportunities. This pillar enhances education beyond the traditional school day through enrichment programs, tutoring, and activities that strengthen student engagement. At Orange Unified, we see this with our CARES program, or ACES, and ELO programs. These programs create a safe and supportive environment, reduce gaps in access to enriching learning experiences, support families with free or low-cost care options, and make a school a place where students want to live, want to be. That's what we want. We want the students to be at the school. The third pillar is active family and community engagement, where families and community partners are through collaborators in school life and decision making. One clear example of this is the growth of our PTAs through our community schools. In our community schools, PTAs create an opportunity for families to partner with the schools, share their voices, and support school priorities. Our PTA Council has shown an increase in both active PTAs and memberships over the past 3 years, reflecting a strong family engagement. The fourth pillar is collaborative leadership and practices, which ensure shared leadership among educators, families, and community partners to guide continuous improvement and sustain the community school model. I'm happy to share that this commitment came to life on December 11 with our first district community school steering committee. We convened for the first meeting of the school year. I want to thank our community partners, the Friendly Center, the Hub OC, our OUSD staff, and families who attended this meeting and share their voices. These 4 pillars create a comprehensive approach that transforms schools into true hubs to support students and families.
Good evening. I'm Christina Ravelas, and I proudly serve at Orange High School. Before we share where we are today, it's important to note the history of community schools at Orange Unified School District and how they have evolved. In year 1, 2022 to 2023, we worked on building foundation for community schools across 11 sites. We hired full-time counselors, created the community school lead role, and opened our first community centers. These centers became hubs for families and students, offering food, clothing, technology support, and wellness services, while hosting workshops like Latino literacy, Disciplina Positiva. We also formed our first district steering committee and secured grants for future growth. Year 2, 2023 to 2024. We expanded our reach to 13 schools. We grew community centers, launched monthly parent engagement classes, and strengthened partnerships like with the Mexican Consulate, and OC Food Bank. We also enhanced newcomer and English learner supports and received Cohort 2 grant funding. Year 3, 2024 to 2025, focused on alignment and professional learning as we expanded to 15 schools. We advanced community centers, established community school councils for shared leadership, and delivered training for leads, principals, and staff. Family engagement flourished through events like English Tea, mental health workshops, and literacy courses. We also received Cohort 3 grant funding, aiding continued growth.
Good evening. I'm Esmeralda Garcia. I'm the community school site lead at Prospect Elementary School. As we enter year 4, it's important to highlight how far we've come and where we are today. Our focus this year is clear: strengthening systems, deepening collaboration, and developing long-term sustainability across 15 community schools. And student and community services has been instrumental in driving this work. Community schools are now under the Student Support and Community Engagement Division, ensuring more substantial district-level alignment and support. Every site now offers food pantries and basic needs, resources, making campuses true family hubs. Parent engagement has grown significantly. 14 sites now have parent computer centers, 15 sites have dry pantries, 8 sites host English classes, 11 sites offer iPad Academy with Rosetta Stone licenses, 6 sites host farmers markets, and multiple sites offer Latino literacy, Disciplina Positiva, and wellness workshops. To strengthen systems, we developed a community school resource guide and ELAC toolkit, aligning site plans with annual progress report goals. To deepen collaboration, we're working to prepare schools to share best practices and resources and ensure that non-community schools can access the supports. As Karina mentioned earlier, we also held our first district steering committee meeting, bringing together families, staff, and partners to guide vision and implementation. To build sustainability, we established capacity building teams focused on the 5 CCSPP strategies. We will begin developing a professional development plan for staff, parents, and partners, including orientation on the community schools framework and collaborative goal setting. While we made significant progress, we recognize there's still important work ahead. Our student and community services and community schools team has been proactive, meeting with OCDE and collaborating with districts such as Anaheim Union High School District, Santa Ana Unified, Centralia Unified, to learn and share best practices. One of our biggest challenges remains achieving full buy-in from all stakeholders at each school site. To address this, We are committed to building capacity among our community, staff, and students, ensuring they have a clear understanding of what the community schools model truly represents. We also need to ensure consistency across all sites by creating clear guidelines for governance and decision-making for both our community school site councils and the district steering committee. Thank you.
Before we move forward, it's essential to understand the current landscape for community schools and how we are using these resources. Across three cohorts, we secured significant investments. Cohort 1, $15.2 million from June 2022 through June 2028, extended from 2027. Cohort 2, $2.85 million, July 2023 through June 2028. And Cohort 3, $3.08 million, July 2024 through June 2029. These grants represent a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to transform our schools into hubs of support. Our priority is to use these funds to build sustainable systems that last beyond the grant period. We currently have approximately over $3 million in carryover funds through community schools. To ensure these dollars are used effectively and responsibly, we are working with business services to launch a new process in January 2026. This process will align with site-level expenses, site implementation plans, annual progress report goals, and our LCAP goals. It will include oversight from community school site councils and the district steering committee to ensure accountability and transparency. The hope is that this approach promotes long-term sustainability, prioritizing the critical roles of the community leads and the elementary counselors, and expand mental health and behavior supports for our students and our families. In addition, we will invest in professional development opportunities for all stakeholders. That includes our staff, our community partners, our site councils, to build capacity, strengthen collaboration, and increase buy-in for our community schools model. Finally, all funding decisions will be guided by site-level input and focus on strategies that improve student well-being, strengthen family engagement, and create systems that are effective today and sustainable for the years to come.
Good evening. I'm Merlin Lopez, a proud parent from Prospect Elementary School. We now would like to take a moment to celebrate the impact of community schools across Orange Unified. This short video highlights the heart of our work, how our schools have become hubs of support for students and families, fostering collaboration, engagement, and equity. You'll see examples of expanded learning opportunities, family engagement activities, and the partnerships that make this model so powerful. As you watch, keep in mind that these successes reflect the dedication of our staff, families, community partners working together to create sustainable systems that go beyond academics and genuinely support the whole child. Let's take a look.
Community schools transform the way we serve students by serving the whole family. Our community schools thrive because of 4 essential pillars: caring for student needs, enriching their learning, welcoming families as partners, and leading with shared purpose.
We know that when we wrap our arms around our community, provide resources, connect, and show stability, we see immediate results in our students. They show up ready to learn, confident, and feel supported.
Since becoming a community school, parents, including myself, have been given an opportunity to become leaders on campus. After a 10-year absence, with the support of community schools, we've been able to reestablish our PTA, giving parents the opportunity to make a difference in their child's education.
Community Action Partnership of Orange County is grateful for collaborating with the Orange Unified Community Schools, which allows us to meet families where they're at and offer the resources and services they need when they need them, empowering families to thrive. We're building stronger families together.
As community school leads, we create experiences that inspire joy, curiosity, culture, and pride. Learning happens beyond the bell. It opens doors for endless possibilities.
Our families are our partners. Their leadership, culture, and voice create strong schools. Every workshop, every celebration, and every connection builds strong community.
I think that's part of what community schools is about, helping each other, helping our community.
Good evening. My name's Cam Geringer-Pate. For the past 3 years, I've had the huge honor and privilege of serving as the director of the Youth Centers of Orange, and now I get to serve the Hub OC in a larger capacity with our grants and partnerships. And as you guys got to see in the video, impact's more than numbers. We all get to see that, and it's about lives changed and community strengthened. And as the former director of the Youth Centers, now in my position with the Hub, we've got to see that happen in a lot of amazing ways. As a community partner, we've been able to help support community schools by distributing some of the food pantries, as well as working with a lot of the other local organizations to bring in resources. But for me personally, I just believe that the youth centers and the Hub we want to be community builders, and we get to be community builders only because of people like the lead team who are here. These men and women who are here are the listening ears in their schools, and we've only been able to participate in our capacity as a community because of their ears. Being curious takes courage, and these are some of the most curious and wonderful people who listen and love really well. So each one of these numbers, as you're looking through these, I just want to remind you that each one of those is a family served, an individual life changed. Families, I think, like a family we know named Kayla, whose kids were in a hard place, and she wasn't sure if she was going to be able to feed her family or pay her rent or buy Christmas presents for her kids this year. And because of our community leads, we were able to get connected to them, and were able to provide those so that they could do all three for their family. Kayla got to have a warm meal as well as support her family, and we only get to do that because of the community schools. We're really grateful for these partnerships. OUSD's partnered closely with community organizations to strengthen systems, deepen collaboration, and ensure long-term sustainability, addressing critical needs such as equitable access to resources, student wellness, and behavioral support. OUSD is building a transformative model. OUSD is an incredibly courageous organization as a whole, and we're grateful to be a part of it, and we're really grateful for the community team and everything that they provide as well. Thank you.
And in case if you're wondering, these numbers are as of the beginning of last school year. So that's amazing work. All right, future state next steps. As we look ahead, our next steps align with the 4 pillars of community schools to strengthen our impact and ensure sustainability. Under integrated student supports, we will expand access to wellness services, academic services, and essential needs by coordinating all supports, including community partners and district initiatives, such as supporting student behavior and our wellness collective, into a unified system of wraparound services for students and families. One exciting initiative that we will work on is a district-wide summer community fair designed to connect our families with resources and provide a strong start to the next school year. To guide these efforts, we will use multiple data sources, need and asset mapping, the surveys, LCAP priorities, California dashboard metrics, and site visits to identify our needs and measure progress. For expanded learning time and opportunities, we will build capacity and share commitment through targeted professional development for administrators, staff, and community partners, ensuring everyone has the tools to strengthen their community school. In addition, we are in the final stages of working with OCDE to launch a data tracker that will improve our ability to measure impact, identify trends, and inform decisions about community schools' learning. Under active family and community engagement, our next steps focus on deepening partnerships and aligning resources with real community needs. We will formalize partnerships through MOUs and create district-wide partnership directory to strengthen collaboration and streamline access to services per feeder pattern. In addition, we will begin comprehensive needs assessments and asset mapping for each high school feeder pattern, ensuring that resources are not only available, but aligned to meet the needs of every community that we serve. These efforts will help us build a more connected, responsive system that empowers families and amplifies their voice. Finally, under collaborative leadership and practices, we just held our first community school steering committee meeting to help guide the vision, direction, and strategic priorities. This committee will also support site-level community councils to include our teachers, families, students, and partners in developing goals aligned with site needs and APR goals. Meetings were initially scheduled quarterly, but I will propose holding them monthly. Our first meeting was held on December 11th, as mentioned before, and we had Cam from Hub OC. We had Dr. Cueto, the CEO of Friendly Center, there as well. We had district and site admin. We had teachers. We had union reps, such as Ms. Ballesteros from Handy Elementary. We had students, parents, and members of OCDE. It was a great meeting, and it reignited some excitement. We are also working on a long-term sustainability plan that ensures community schools remain a cornerstone of our district. This plan prioritizes retaining our counselors and site leads for the long term, recognizing their critical role in student success and family engagement. Our strategy includes braiding funding approaches, leveraging categorical funding, partnerships, and future grants to create a stable financial foundation. Our commitment is clear. Community schools are here to stay, and so are the dedicated professionals who make them thrive. These next steps will deepen collaboration, strengthen systems, and ensure community schools remain a cornerstone of our district. In closing, this image captures the essence of what community schools is all about: access, dignity, and opportunity. When a child reaches for an orange at a school-based farmer's market, it's more than just a piece of fruit. It represents a system that removes barriers and nourishes potential. Community schools transforms campuses into hubs of support, where families find resources, students feel cared for, staff supported, and learning thrives. This simple act connects to a larger purpose, ensuring every single kid of ours in Orange Unified has what they need to succeed, academically, socially, and emotionally. Together, we are not just feeding students, we are fueling futures. Community schools are not just special to me, they are special to all of us here tonight, and to every student, every family, and every partner who is part of our work. This is more than an initiative, it's a lifeline and a place where needs are met and dreams are nurtured. Like many students that we serve today, some of us, including myself, once walked in their shoes. We know what it means to rely on a food pantry for a meal, to depend on after-school programs for safety, learning, or hope. Community schools represent that promise that no child or family stands alone, and the schools can be more than classrooms. They are centers of opportunity, belonging, and support. We want to thank our community schools team. They are the heart and the force behind this work. Our community partners, our staff, our board, our superintendent, and cabinet for their unwavering commitment to our kids in our communities. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Angel. Thank you to all the presenters, did an excellent job. Outstanding presentation. I'd like to invite my board colleagues to ask questions if they so choose. Trustee Vane.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I appreciate how all of you, many of you, came together to present today and also came out. Mr. Angel, I know we acknowledged you recently as Administrator of the Year, and I really appreciate your vision for this work. One thing I am really happy to see is that we're working to strengthen our relationships with our existing community partners. And one thing I would like to see, and I've spoken with Dr. Menares about this a little bit, is kind of streamlining that relationship between not only our nonprofit partners, but also business partners that might, play a role here. It may be that Home Depot might like to donate a garden, right? Or maybe Chick-fil-A would like to donate a lunch, those kinds of things that we can think about together. Also, I really appreciate that you're thinking about sustainability beyond what the existing grants might be able to cover, because I think that's the intent, is to provide, a seed for us to grow in the future. In also terms of connecting with others, I recall maybe there was an effort to do this, but thinking about learning from what other school districts might be doing that have received that grant as well. I think we did that at the beginning, but kind of continuing to learn from others and seeing how they're doing. And finally, I know myself, I'm thinking about what my own children will be doing in the summer, because we live in a major metropolitan area and things fill up really fast. And I know our CARES program, for the summer opens up and then it's full, immediately. So I'm wondering if you might share a little bit more about your vision for the summer community fair.
Absolutely. As many of you know, we have a lot of generous people, including our board, staff, community partnerships, vendors, that every single summer before the school year begins, they donate a lot to we also have families. The Fields family is one of them, where we get backpacks, we get school supplies, we get gift cards. We get a lot, that comes to our office. So our vision is to really connect with every single person across our district. Health services, which is in our department, mental health, our counselors, our psychs, we've expanded our division now with our SPED department, getting their support as well, looking at other departments, but also community partners that want to come and just provide for our families. And our vision, like I've told our leads, is we have a committee that is already working on this, but I told them, dream big. We want to go big. Our vision is to have it here at the district office and really promote it for every single family across our district. Of course, we want to prioritize our McKinney foster youth and our families, who are low socioeconomic, allow them to come here where they can get items for school, get free services. I know we have strong partnerships with the Assistance League of Orange, for example, that can provide free services. Of course, we have to work with risk management and business services to make sure that we're in compliance. But we want to go big. Our families, our kids deserve it, and that's something that we want to have this summer at our district office. And we welcome your support as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to our community leads for coming out to speak. I know a couple of you mentioned that you were nervous, but I just want to say you all did a wonderful job, so thank you for doing that. And, this group is really special because I've seen them out there and they've grown so much. I actually met a couple. They went to a Toastmasters meeting and they said they wanted to figure out ways to improve their speaking and just engagement with parents, and they thought that was a good way to do it. And so I love the fact that they're always trying to find a way to do better, to get better, so that they can support our community. So thank you for doing that. And Cameron, thank you for always being here. I appreciate it. And I didn't realize you're with the Hub now, so that's awesome. Yeah, because we met when you were doing Youth Centers of Orange. So thank you. That being said, I just want to say also, I really appreciate the fact that the parent engagement is increasing and the resources that you're going out into the community and gathering is awesome. I was wondering if we can get a list of the resources that you're working with, because I didn't, I'm sure you are, but I didn't hear anything about working with resources in the unhoused communities, whether there are things for our students who are feeling like they need more supports in those areas.
Absolutely. Would you like that in a Friday update, or would you
Yeah,
like
that would
to
be
hear from some
great.
of our leads that can share that right now?
Friday update is fine. I don't want to put anyone on the spot. but just so that we can see how comprehensive the list is, that would be great.
Absolutely, we can do that
Yeah,
for you.
and then I'm wanting to know, are you working with any resources in the Anaheim area at all? Are you focused?
Yes, we are. In fact, just recently, we were working with the Anaheim Fire Department, in which they donated toys to over 100 families in our community. I don't know if Ernie would like to. Oh, yes, and we've also, we're part of an Anaheim Coalition, which is a group of nonprofit organizations that come together once a month. So we've been part of that. Great partnerships, great communities, nonprofits that are working in the city of Anaheim that are supporting our schools in Anaheim. Our goal, I mentioned earlier that we want to do asset mapping, and our goal is to be working with every single city that we work with. For example, Villa Park. We still have families, that attend some of our schools in Villa Park that are low income. Through open enrollment. Anaheim, we started that work. We've already done that work extensively with the city of Orange. We plan to do the same thing with the city of Garden Grove. As you know, we have one school in Garden Grove, that's Lamson. Right. And we also have one school in Santa Ana in which we've already started that work. Okay. And just for an example, we're part of GRIP. GRIP is a partnership that we have not just with Orange PD, but we also are part of GRIP in the city of Santa Ana and also the city of Garden Grove as well.
And then I'm going to have Christina Reveles from Orange High School come up to speak briefly on the unhoused thing. But I've got a meeting tomorrow with a member of Supervisor Sarmiento's office to talk about the WARM program, because we're going to be partnering with them once again this year on voucher system during the cold weather season for the unhoused. So that's a program that we were involved in last year. They're going to kick it off again this year. So that is an example of which, with us being under the same division, where we've got the different parts of the division working together to kind of put those resources together under one umbrella, so that way they're easily communicated back and forth. But I'll have Christina share on what she's been working on.
To answer your question about housing, that is a great question, because that is one of our biggest needs. At the high school, I see it a lot. Kids are sleeping in their cars, they're in the park. That is our biggest need in the state and in the county. So we do have community partners, but unfortunately, they do not have housing. Sarmiento does offer vouchers, but he doesn't offer it for secondary. So that is our biggest battle. However, we believe that if we work with our county and our local city level officials, we can build something great, because Anaheim has it. So Canyon is fortunate to have Project Say. They have a representative that is there. The kid can go in, but a lot of people don't know about it. And anyone in Anaheim district can touch Project Say. So we are actually working on a resource guide. Unfortunately, with housing, there's not much, but it doesn't mean we're not going to get there. And we would love to have something similar for Orange. The Hub OC, right now they do individual housing, but they have been amazing in stepping up to help two of our families. Somebody just lost a mother. The 85-year-old grandma is unhoused. Not only have they supplied food, but one of the case managers has called them and said, I can help you get these temporary vouchers. And so now they are saying, hey, there's a need for our students to be housed. Let's work something. So I did want to share that.
Great.
We are working towards that, but it is our biggest need.
Well, that's what I was thinking, that if you can give us a list of the resources that you're working with, and maybe one of us on the board too may have some ideas, or maybe we might have resources that we can let you know about too.
We can do that for you.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I didn't even look. I just started to talk. I figured we're going in order. We kind of like to do things in order. Well, first of all, thank you. I mean, what an amazing program, and just seeing all your faces. I know I've seen you guys out and about, but it's amazing what you're doing. This is something we've needed for such a long time. I mean, we have students in need, families in need at every school. So I was glad to hear that, we are reaching out to the schools that don't have the community school. Doesn't matter whether you're in Anaheim Hills, Villa Park, West Orange, Santa Ana, wherever you are, we have families who need things, who need resources. So I really, really appreciate all the work you're doing. I just have a question about, I thought I heard someone say community site councils, or was that school site council when you're talking about funding? Are there site councils for community schools?
Yes.
Okay, and maybe I missed that. Can you just real quickly tell me about that? Who, is that just all of the parents involved, anybody that wants to be on it, or?
Absolutely. So we have two types of councils. At the district level, we have our district steering committee, which just started. We had our first meeting last week. But each site also has a council. It's a community school council in which it entails parents, students, the lead, staff, community partners. It's a mini version of our district steering committee at the site level. Now, their role is to make sure that the money that they have that's allocated for each site per community schools, they have a say in how to spend it. Each school site, as you know, is allocated an amount of money through community schools, which the lead, the counselor is funded, and whatever's left over should be spent on the goals or the actions that are aligned with their APR goals or their implementation plan. So they're pretty much there to make sure that they're doing the checks and balances and make sure that everything aligns.
Okay, great. I'm glad to hear that. And I probably knew that, but I heard that and I thought you said that and not school site council, so I wanted to make sure that we've got people at all the sites that are working on that. Are they nominated? Is there a certain number of people, or is it anybody who wants to be on it? Or do we have, like, we need to have students, we need to have a staff member?
Karina, go ahead.
Okay, so the important part of the council is we need to reach out to those families that they don't have a voice on the table. That is the key component of the council, and the students as well. They are foster or McKinney-Vento, low-income English learners. Otherwise, we won't be listening to those voices. So it has to be intentional when we select the families and students. We need representation. And as well, we invite staff. The principal needs to be there as well, the community lead, and community partners. We ask for them to commit to a couple of years, so to make impact. And not only to the steering committee not only decide on how to spend the money, they decide what are the priorities what they have to tackle, right? And they need to analyze data as well and do the street data. So what we recently did at Jordan is we surveyed a lot of parents with street data. Actually, it was not a survey. We went and asked questions, like face-to-face. My counselor and I have my lunch supervisor here as well. She's my parent as well. We went to the community and asked questions. We surveyed like around a little bit more than 100 parents. And this is key. The steering committee needs to listen to the voices. It's not the decision only making with the 10 to 20 people that are the committee. They need to listen to the community. That's key. I don't know if that answered your question.
It did, thank you. It's so important too to have something at every site because every site's different. Every site, little community has different needs. So yes, thank you. Thank you. Thinking about the community fair, and I know you've all reached out to different districts, and somebody mentioned Centralia. I know that I think we had somebody there or that knew about it, but they had an amazing community fair last year that they did on their blacktop. I'm just envisioning our whole parking lot out here or something.
And the grass area.
And the grass area. One thing that principals know this too, and parents know, if you have kids that are performing, you're going to get a lot more parents there. And what they did is had their ELOP, some of their ELOP programs and summer programs. So it wouldn't be extra necessarily work, but just something to think about because if the kids perform, the parents are going to come. They had a huge turnout, and I know you guys have contacts there, but they did an amazing job. Just having so many different resources from the community. So that would be wonderful. I'm glad to hear you guys are doing that. I just had two quick questions. Somebody mentioned just, kind of next steps and things we still maybe have for barriers, getting full buy-in, about it. And I'm just curious if that's, I know it's site-specific, I don't need to hear specifics, but is that just lack of education, maybe lack of getting the word out there that people still don't know or maybe understand what our community schools do?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this, we have 3 cohorts, and as you know, it's been it's been led by several directors in our district, and I think the handing from director to director there's been some gaps, some holes, some miscommunication. Now it's with us. We're passionate about community schools, and we know that there's still some work ahead of us. There's some great work that's happening. Our leads are amazing. Our counselors are amazing. But our priority is to make sure that every single person on that campus understands community schools, whether it's the custodian, whether it's a parent, whether it's a student, whether it's a community partner. They all have to be able to understand community schools and what it brings to the table. It's not just about the food pantries. It's more than just that, right? It's really, I think we're really looking at it on a global level where how can we integrate everything we're doing in our district so it makes sense and it's aligned. Nothing should be working in isolation, whether it's support for mental health, whether it's health services, whether it's expanded learning, whether it's academic services. It all has to be integrated and be working together.
I also wanted to comment on that too, because when we first applied for the grant right at the beginning, both grants were offered, the planning grant and the implementation grant, and OUSD applied for the implementation grant right from the beginning and not for the planning grant. And so when we applied for the implementation grant, we were trying to hire people right from the beginning, and we might have benefited from maybe doing the planning ahead of time, so that way we could have had a plan of educating the community and educating the staff ahead of time before going into the implementation part. So we were kind of like building the plane as we were flying it, and so maybe we didn't quite get the best start right from the beginning. And so I think a lot of people here would kind of like say they've been feeling like they've been playing catch up ever since, and so it's kind of hard to get like that catch up kind of feeling like from the beginning. But as we kind of mentioned before, like we're hiring a communications and strategy officer because it's not just community schools. Like how many different programs have we say like we need to get the communication out, like not only for our external folks, but also for our internal staff too. Like we need to talk about the great things that are going on in our schools. So it's not just community schools, like it's a lot of different things that we need to talk about the great things that are happening, internally and externally.
Yeah, you filled in the rest of my comment. Thanks. That's exactly what I was going to say. That's great. And then just the last thing, the other thing that was mentioned was the kind of the guidelines that are going to be, throughout the entire district, throughout all of our community schools. And I know that's something the steering committee is working on, right? The process of kind of having the guidelines for our community schools.
Yeah, so there's different levels of, how we're approaching this. For one, we do have our leads. Two, we have our steering committee, but we also have one of our teachers who's going to be working with us on developing that framework and making sure that what we're doing here in our district aligns with the California framework of community schools. And from that, we do have committees that will be working on developing that, enhancing that, but also promoting that to everyone, all our stakeholders across the district.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I'm sure the leads, you guys are busy enough, but if a representative or someone is going to other schools that don't have the community schools, going to their ELAC meetings and going to PTA meetings and, back to school night, whatever it is, and having, just spreading the word, and we'll leave that to our new communications officer, because I'm sure they'll have a great idea. But just thank you. It's just so wonderful, especially this time of year. We just saw the warm hearts, warm hands, and that, and all of the stuff that came out of that, and just the good feels. And I know that you guys get that all the time. So thank you. Thank you so much.
First of all, thank you all very much for being here and presenting. That was fabulous. I just have a couple comments. I love hearing about the great care and support happening with McKinney-Vento foster youth and homeless. I could break down right here and start crying because I know all about it. And in the school bus industry, it's heartwarming just to see that things are happening that are good. So thank you. And also PTAs being reassembled and flourishing throughout. I remember learning about PTA when I was here in elementary school. My mom was involved. But anyway, I thank you all very much for all your time and efforts.
Thank you. So first, I just want to say to all the leads, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I know you've hung in there for a long time, and to say that it was a slow start, I think is a bit of an understatement. We had some gaps, and you all hung in there. And you did the best you could do with the resources that you had, and you built those relationships over the period of the last few years. I hope that this reorganization and this renewed focus on community schools really is the support that you need, and that you've sort of learned the scrappy way over the last few years, and now hopefully you're actually getting that support that you need, because as we know, the community schools are coming from the community. It is grassroots. It is based on the needs of individual communities, but you have to have support from the district. And my understanding is you put together a manual or something. I would assume that that's part of the process of creating that sort of centralized support system. Is that okay?
Resource guide.
So that has got to be really helpful, because we need to make sure that we aren't just, it's easy to say, oh, it's a community school. Community can take care of it. But no, you need the assistance of the district. And obviously, we have the resources at the district level to not just to give to the community schools, but to actually create sustainable plans and to create those partnerships. And it is seed money. After all, it's creating those partnerships that are going to sustain it. And so all of you have been doing that work. And I just want to thank you, because I know it hasn't always been easy. But I'm very excited, and I'm very excited that the reorganization brought you under the umbrella of Student and Community Services, so that there is a focus on it now, and that it really, because it really is about a whole child approach, which we as a district believe in. And believing in it, claiming it, is different than doing it, and we really want to make sure that we're doing it. We do really well, but we can do better, and I think the community schools is a really solid way to be doing that, so thank you. I know this year the need is phenomenal. I sit on the board for the Friendly Center, so I'm aware of what the need is out there, at least that we're seeing at that level. And so I know that the need for these community schools is even greater, and the services that you are providing is even greater. The numbers that we saw, you said was from last year, or the beginning of last year?
As of last year till now.
Oh, as of last year till now, okay.
Yeah.
But I know that, with all the, let's face it, cuts to federal cuts and cuts to food programs, SNAP cuts, there'll be healthcare potential rises in costs that are going to impact families, and so those relationships are even more necessary now. And so again, appreciate you so much. I know that Supervisor Chafee has a rental assistance program. That doesn't necessarily address Orange Unified, but I do know that Superintendent Sarmiento is potentially thinking about doing that as well, even though county funds are really kind of they're circling the wagons a little bit at the county level because of the cuts to federal funding. And I know a lot of the family resource centers did have funds that were cut as well, or didn't receive FACT grants. But I know that that is a passion of Supervisor Sarmiento, and so I would just encourage you to really go to him and explain to him the reality of the individuals who do need that rental assistance or utility assistance. Sometimes it's utility assistance that's going to keep them in their home for 1 more month, 2 more months, 3 more months. So advocate as well as you can, and if you want our help at all, please come to us. Anything we can do to help advocate and get the word out and go to some of those funding sources, we are happy to do. We know you're the professionals, but you can use us as props if you need to. So we're happy to be there. So that's it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
If I may add something, community schools doesn't just serve the kids from that particular school. Our leads have done a great job to reach out to every single site across our district to make sure that their families also have access to the resources that we provide out of the community schools. So there's a district-wide partnership.
I'd like to thank not just the leads, but also the leadership of those in the department here in the division. Ediberto Angel, I'm always very inspired by your leadership. I'm thankful for Mr. Gonzalez and his leadership with respect to this as well. But these leads need you, obviously, to listen to them, to help shepherd a lot of this process, and you're doing it. And this is the second. Yes, this is the second community schools presentation I've heard. The first one was about a year ago. There's so many positive things that have happened since then. And I would say mainly it's because of the time, effort, and energy that you all have put into your specific areas, your communities. These aren't just things that we check off, right? These are real people who have real issues every day. At my site, I say that respectfully, at my site at Palmyra, parents are going right in. They're talking to students, they're talking to families, they're talking to the individuals that are there, asking questions, getting support that they normally wouldn't get from administration, quite frankly. They normally wouldn't get from teachers. They go to you because you represent them. So I'm so thankful for that. I'm so thankful for that. Please continue to do the good work. And as past President Erickson just said, it's important for you to utilize us in any way you see fit. Please come to us and give us whatever you need, and we'll do our best to fulfill those options. But thank you once again for this presentation. It was outstanding. I can't say enough about it. Thank you.
President Glass, if I could add just one more thing in terms of thinking about systematizing and, as a district, I am also so happy to see that new PTAs come in, but we have, and Trustee Yamasaki knows all about this, the Orange Unified Council of PTAs. So it may be that community schools would like to come to their meeting and make a presentation and kind of facilitate that connectedness.
Actually, that did happen. They came to our meeting. So it was Mr. Gonzalez and I met with them first, and then we welcomed them. We invited them to our community schools meeting, and they were there to present and collaborate.
The board?
Our president and past president, Ms. Douglas and Ms. Correa.
I guess what I was thinking is then the PTA presidents and the members on the board of the schools that don't have community schools would be aware of it at that parent level.
Yeah. One of the, in collaborating with other districts, one of the things that, we want to strive for is other districts, they have merged forces. And what I mean by that is their, school site council, their PTA council, community schools, they're just one team now. We're not there yet, but I think that's a vision down the line that I think, and when I say integrate all the great things we do, I think it's powerful if we can come into one group and do and work together, because I think the vision, the mission is the same for every single group. And I don't think they should be working in isolation. I think they should really merge forces and just work together. But that's down the line. Yeah.
Mary? Okay. Thank you for saying that, because that's one of the things I wanted to say, is that I know that a lot of them are stretched thin, they have a lot to do, but combining resources and maybe doing joint things together for the parents instead of, because I'm not sure, parent engagement is really key. It empowers the parents. It makes them feel like they are important and what their voice is important. They helps them to understand how the education system works. And so at this point, I'm not sure how many parents are going to workshops. I'm not sure how many parents are really utilizing. I see the raw numbers here as a collective, but in your individual schools, like what are the percentages of parents that are getting involved or going? And I know it's going to vary at each school site, but are we doing more to try to engage them? Are we just putting out messages via email, or are we actively reaching out to parents?
I think all of the above. Like I mentioned earlier, one of the things that we're working with OCD is creating a data tracking sheet that actually Santa Ana and our district will be piloting. Each school, community school, will have that data tracker. So every resource, every service we provide to our kids, family, or staff, we will track it so that way we have real numbers.
Okay, great. Yeah, eventually I would like to hear like how many parents are engaged down the line.
Yeah, we have that information and we can provide that
Yeah.
in the Friday update as well.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I failed to thank the two of you, so thank you so much for your presentation. That was really wonderful. One of the things is, I know sometimes what the community needs and what district policies are there can be some bureaucracy there. And I'm just going to take one example, needing paper flyers going out. And that might be a situation that the people on the ground know, but our policy at the district level may conflict with that. I just hope that we can get rid of that red tape so that we can truly do the communication that needs to be done at whatever site level. And it may differ from site to site. But that is something I hope that we just really listen to the experts on the ground that know their communities and make sure that we aren't, being the bureaucrats that aren't able to do what it is that they need done.
Well,
Because we
thank
just need
you
to
for
get it
saying
done.
that, because actually Miss Lynn, Christina Lynn, came and did an in-person meeting with them to discuss LCAP and get their immediate feedback, and they were actually able to tell her exactly about how they can't spend money on certain things that culturally with their families really connects them in terms of food and decorations and things like that they're not permitted to spend money on, and how we can connect some of the, even some of our community partners that have more flexibility in terms of spending on some of their dollars, and how we can connect and braid some of those funding together when those kind of barriers really stop them from doing some of the
That's
work
the perfect example,
that
and I
really
know we
kind of-
talked about it a lot.
Yeah, because
so.
like a little cafecito, kind of bring in the
Right.
families to kind of connect them to some of that learning and some of the discussions and conversation that really needs to happen at the site too. So they were able to kind of express that in a real way that maybe you can't do on a Google survey. So
Exactly. Thank you.
If I could add, Mr. Gonzalez, thank you also for all of your efforts in this front. As in terms of communication, I really also love the paper flyer idea. But for me, I've been seeing the banners on the sides of the schools, and I've noticed that they're for particular events rather than, we are a community school or here's the resource, you know what I mean? So that might be something to consider as well.
And we also have Dr. Perez, who, will be working with us on that too. Sorry to put you on the spot, Dr. Perez.
So real quick, I also failed to thank you. Thank you, Mr. Angel, and thank you, Mr. Gonzalez, for your presentation.
You're very welcome.
We speak as one, so we all thank you. We all thank you. Like in my house, everybody's got to get a birthday gift on someone else's birthday. It's crazy. It's expensive, but it's all good. And I think it's important to note in conclusion that the importance of food when we're meeting as families, culturally, that's so important. And when you're able to sit down with each other and really get into that communal opportunity, so many things happen from that. So it's an excellent thing. So remove the barriers, open up the monies so we can do that. And we can still be physically responsible, but we also make that opportunity for our families and for our communities. Thank you both very much. Oh, you want to? Wow, user wide.
2, 3. Okay.
All right. Thank you all very much. And if you please don't feel like you have to stay. If you'd like to stay, please feel free to. But if you'd like to go, the football game is still on. It's the Rams against the Seattle Seahawks.
Oh.
It's a big game.
Yeah, that is a
It's a big game. We're going to move into work study session 3B. 3B, which is the Facilities Master Plan presentation. And I'd like to turn this portion over to our superintendent, Dr. Menares.
All right, well, thank you. So board, tonight you're going to receive a very high-level review of the Facilities Master Plan. It'll start with a historical walk that is intended to give you a deeper dive into the context of how OUSD might optimize our resources and offer learning environments that are better aligned to graduating college and career-ready youth. So the Facilities Master Plan was collaboratively developed many years ago. I think it's been nearly 10 years. Is that what I understand? We brought some people back that had not been, that are actually in retirement, I understand. And so it collaboratively developed, and it provided an espoused learning environment that OUSD, the community, wanted for their children. And but the plan was not fully implemented, and nor was it prioritized in the budgeting process. So when we think about resource optimization moving forward, we have this amazing piece of information, very lengthy and detailed piece of information that can serve us in the future. And so bringing you up to speed in what was asked of the community in the past and thinking about how that can move us forward will be really important. Tonight, you will only need, unless you choose to, you'll only need the presentation that was provided for you on the dais. And so I'll turn this over to Ms. Holguin to introduce our presenters. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Menares, and thank you for that thorough background in regards to tonight's and the purpose of tonight's presentation. Let me make sure we get it on here. There we go. Okay. Well, as Dr. Menares mentioned, this is a very high-level presentation in terms of just building the background as to what happened. The plan was actually formally adopted back in 2021. And so tonight we are very fortunate to have LPA with us here kind of reviewing the process, and our overall goal is to review the board goals from the FPM at that time, the background on key decisions, where to go from here, and then provide you an open discussion based on the Facilities Master Plan. With that said, I'm going to be turning it over. We have with us tonight Samuel Lim, who is the principal managing director at LPA. We have Nicole Mehta, who's also a project manager and has worked with us on various projects. We have Lindsay Hayward, who has also worked with us on various projects and is an educational partner. And then from retirement, as Dr. Menares mentioned, we have Jim Kissel. So we appreciate you coming out of retirement and being here with us tonight. And with that said, I'll turn it over to Lindsay.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. So nice to see you and to be back. Yes, Jim was principal in charge when we worked on the FMP together, for those of you who remember, both of us. So definitely when we got this ask, I was like, do you want to come join us?
Even further back, LPA's very first K-12 public school project was Canyon Rim Elementary School, and I actually designed that almost 30 years ago. So
the history is long.
Orange has a special place in our memory.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
So-
just
go ahead.
Very, very quickly, just to describe our roles here. Nicole and I are more on the project management side, so we've had the privilege of working on the Villa Park High School campus. We are into the delivery and execution side. Nicole was also the project manager on the gymnasium modernizations for each of the high schools. And like we just said, Lindsay and Jim really spearheaded the Facilities Master Plan in 2019 and ended in 2021. I like to say that Jim and Lindsay wrote the book on educational facility master planning in Southern California. So we're very fortunate to have Jim come out of retirement for us tonight. So thanks. Go ahead, Lindsay.
Thanks, Sam. So Salema sort of covered the purpose of the meeting. The agenda tonight, in terms of how we're going to kind of walk through the story here, is really to start with where we ended. So where we landed at the end of the facilities master plan in terms of the big decisions that were made that informed the deliverable and what ended up being the master plan. And then we're going to sort of take a step back, look at the timeline of how we got there and the process that we went through in order to get to those decision points that we'll kind of talk through in the beginning. And then we'll talk a little bit about maybe where to go from here and next steps. So where we landed, there we go. So some key planning assumptions that we had as we went through the process, and this was after many months of talking and meetings and lots of engagement and things, but ultimately what the master plan ended up portraying in all of the site diagrams was that there were going to be feature sites, so a magnet campus, much like McPherson, because of its success, a magnet would draw district-wide, and an academy campus would draw from within a high school community boundary. And the importance in that was really to give choice to families in terms of options for a new model of a K-8, and also to create some innovation in terms of program innovation that would draw and attract and retain students and staff. Further, as we went through the process, we knew that we couldn't make every single campus, right, a magnet or an academy, and we also needed to be cognizant and good stewards of potential funding available. So we couldn't improve every single thing in every single place, so we really took a tiered approach to it. Tier 1 were sites that were those really big kind of moves of creating magnets and academies and adding some capacity on those sites. Tier 2 were really sites with transformative improvements. So that was a lot of full modernizations of campuses and targeted improvements. So maybe a new MPR, a new library, so a new building, new construction in addition to comprehensive modernization. And Tier 3 were sites that were budgeted at more of a state match modernization. So knowing that you might go apply for funds from the state, what are sort of not a full modernization, but a state match modernization in terms of that. And so we'll walk through a little bit more of that in a moment. And then in terms of target enrollments, because of some things we'll talk about throughout the presentation, we had come up with some target enrollments of planning capacities for school types. So elementary schools of 2 different sizes, K-8 schools at 900 students, and middle schools at 2 different sizes based on what we were seeing from some of the demographics.
Ask a quick question really quick.
Oh, of course.
So this is where we were in 2021?
Yes.
And this was supposed to be executed, not things that were executed.
Nothing has been executed from the facilities master plan, to my knowledge.
Okay.
Yes. So when it comes to the Tier 1 feature sites or feature programs, these were the campuses that were identified as the magnets and academies. So in each of the feeder patterns, there would be a magnet. For instance, Canyon High School feeder would be Crescent K-8 and Running Springs as a K-8 academy. Each of these that are identified on the screen already had either a program going, or we worked with Ed Services to identify sort of those programs that were already happening, whether it was dual immersion. You can even see that in some of the titles of the schools. But those were really sort of feeding programs that were already going or that people were really interested in having as a component to these. So we worked really closely during this process of identifying the right campuses and their focus for each campus. From Tier 2, this was the transformative improvements. So this starts to list, like I said, again, this is where we landed at the end. This starts to list per feeder area the type of scope at each of these campuses. So you'll see a lot of them are full modernizations. Some of them were building in additional capacity. Some of them were new MPRs. We know as a part of the process, there was a lot of talk about a culture of sharing in Orange Unified. And so this idea that Certain campuses that were maybe near each other in geographic location could share an MPR, that you're not having to, maybe you build a slightly bigger one there, that you're not building them at every single campus from a cost perspective. So that was taken into account with these transformative improvements. And tier 3 was more about the equitable modernization. So rather than full modernization and transformational, maybe some new construction, this was more about equitable modernization. And Jim might.
Yeah, I was going
wanna
to say
chime
it was important to convey that these are tiers based on scopes of work. They are not tiers on priority. And if we looked at a number of different names, this is what the district settled on in terms of what we wanted to call the various different kinds of scope, but they should never be inferred as a priority ranking of any different scope of work. Because when funding comes available, depending on the source of the funding, it could be limited. You could have a tier 3 site that has eligibility for modernization, and you want to claim that from the state, and so that moves that up into a higher priority project to match with your local dollars as you have those available. So there's a lot of different factors that go into when a specific project would move forward, and none of that should be inferred from how the various sites are being grouped. This is purely a programmatic analysis of the different types of facilities that would occur within each of the regions of the district.
That's a great point, and it actually leads me to our next slide, which we even put this in the document. There was a lot of conversation about, well, if you put numbers to it, that implies prioritization. If you put letters to it, sometimes people still imply prioritization to it. So we wanted to make clear what tiers do and do not state. So as Jim said, they're more of program or types of categories of improvement more so than they are priorities. So tiers do translate the innovative sites vision into proposals at the various campuses, and we'll talk a bit more later about how we landed there. It organizes sites into groupings by similar scope. It develops a unique plan for each campus based upon program and past improvement history, so that starts to speak to the types of programs that might have been focused on for the magnets and academies. And then it recognizes that funding for facilities improvements is not unlimited, and that culture of sharing will continue, so much like the MPR example I mentioned. Tiers do not, however, infer a striation of projects based on priority or level of improvement specified. Jim just gave a great example of how a tier 3 site might actually be the quicker project or the one that might be the most appropriate from an eligibility standpoint. It does not identify a date for potential improvements. I know oftentimes when we work on master plans, the public perception is often like, and so when is this going to happen? They see the plan and it's, so in 2 years, this is what my site will look like. But really, you know, as you all know, we have to have funding in order to implement those things. So it is sort of a hard thing to convey and juggle. It does not dictate the approach to scope or budget differently between the various tiers, and it creates a standard improvement template, but promotes choice and variety within each feeder and community. And that was a conversation we had very early on, which we'll talk a bit about where the board goals lied at the beginning of the project, or beginning of the process in just a moment. So also where we landed as a result of all of the different site improvements, and you'll see here, this is all of the elementary and middle schools and some of the alternative and district support sites. We landed at a cost of just shy of $1 billion, and that was in 2021 dollars. And that is a lot based on the age of schools in the district and improvements that have not been able to be funded. And also, you'll notice this isn't with the high schools included because those had their own individual master plans done, and so they were having those improvements actually work done while we were in the process of doing this master plan. So that's sort of where we landed as an end point. So now we're going to walk back and kind of talk about the process timeline that took us there. So the overall process schedule, this is listed out on 2 slides in front of you. We kicked off with a study session or a board meeting where we established some overarching goals, which we'll review in just a moment, in September of 2019. You'll see our board interactions are always along the top and along the bottom. It's how we interacted with principals and students and teachers and staff and parents with online surveys. We had a facilities master plan committee, which was quite robust, filled this room in all of those committee meetings, very active and engaged, which was fantastic. And then we met with them throughout the process, both to convey things you all were talking about at the time, and bringing back ideas back and forth. At the March 3rd study session in 2020, just before the world went through what it did, we really started to discuss that idea of developing a tiered approach. So how do you innovate? How do you do something a little bit different to address the needs, knowing there's a significant amount of need? And we'll talk about some of those goals and targets, but that's when we first started talking about that. We talked a bit about shared assets. How do you share things so you're not building every single thing at every single place? How could that work? And then at the board meeting in September of 2020, that's really when we came back with what you just saw previously was kind of the school site tier assignments, and where we started putting pen to paper in terms of drafting out potential outcomes of what a diagram might look like for each of the sites. Fast forward to, even though there was a lot of work done in there, fast forward to, that should say May 20th, 2021, we had a board study session where we reviewed the draft FMP, we talked about stakeholder priorities, and we really kind of delved into developing some board priorities. Now, what I will say about that, throughout the process, we are always asking people, we are trying to kind of put in their brain that we don't know what kind of funding sources will be available, so we want to understand based on needs what your top priorities are. So throughout the process, we really tried to capture those from each group. Surveys, parents, FMP committee, and as we got to this meeting, also with the board. And so it's really important to understand sort of what those were at the time, even though we did not ultimately have funding sources identified to tie those to, which would have taken it more into a project level. Okay, so that was the timeline.
So even really before we started work and even sat down in detail with district staff in terms of determining a schedule and a process for the master plan, we wanted to have a workshop with the board to hear the board's thoughts in terms of what are their goals for the master plan. What types of things would you like to see incorporated into it? And for your district, it was particularly important because you could have, it's a blessing and a curse in the sense that you, at the elementaries and the middles, not have spending as many dollars. You've kind of got a fork in the road. You can decide, am I going to modernize it, or is this really a time for transformation? And we wanted to ask those big questions because many districts, the way the bonds started and everything else is they have done multiple cycles of modernization to a campus and still have never effectively transformed it for the programs that it's trying to implement. So we wanted to put all of those kind of big questions out there and give the board a chance to provide input. And so what you see here are the overarching goals for the FMP process that came out of that board interaction. One was innovation in planning and programs that are to attract students. One to provide educational options for students within their communities, retain resident students, expand middle school enrollment, increase capture of private school and out-of-district students. You have quite a few competitors within your area here. Decrease West Side, East Side movement, and overall, efficiently use and be good stewards of the community's dollars. In other words, this does not want to be a Taj Mahal master plan. That's why you keep hearing us refer to that culture of sharing and everything else. We haven't put every need in here because you shouldn't put everything that would have no likelihood of ever really happening. It wants to be within the realm of reason. So we were always trying to keep efficiency within mind with everything we were doing. So these were the overarching goals that came out of the interaction with the board. We did the same process once the Facilities Master Plan Committee was formed. And in our first meeting, basically had interactions with both the small and large group to see what everybody was thinking their goals were for the master plan process from the basis of the organizations or groups that they were representing there on the Facilities Master Plan Committee. It was a very diverse group. It represented all the different stakeholder groups within the district, both from your parent and your staff, but also community and other aspects. So we wanted to make sure that we heard from everybody because they had very different thoughts. One thing we did hear very clearly was some anxiousness from everybody for something to happen. Many of the people had been through previous planning processes and had a lot of knowledge. And so we spent a lot of time talking about that, and we heard some goals from them. Basically, can we move this forward? So what came out of those interactions was what we called guiding principles, and these were developed in collaboration with the Facilities Master Plan Committee. Matter of fact, many of the words in here were actually quotes or words that were used by people within the group because we recorded the various meetings. The first guiding principle is that students are at the center of the district's mission, embrace the OUSD edge and translate its initiatives to facilities. Engage community in the process to foster ownership and support. Develop an actionable long-term plan grounded in the OUSD strategic vision and built on previous accomplishments and successes. Create a positive student experience through development of innovative, adaptable, high-quality learning environments. Construct equitable, safe, welcoming, and inclusive facilities that cultivate student, staff, and community pride. And then promote stewardship through the development of a responsible plan based on integrity and excellence. So these were the overarching guiding principles that the Facilities Master Plan committee came up with for the process. And together with what the board said, these really became our guideposts to help us steer the Facilities Master Plan process and make sure that we were looking at the right things and asking the right questions as we were interacting with various different groups. Lindsay?
Thank you. So in terms of an overall process, a comprehensive facilities master plan typically consists of these 4 components. Educational vision, which is really how does curriculum want to be delivered? So how are students going to learn? How are teachers going to teach from that perspective? Demographics, we really want to understand, and something I think the state is contending with right now, how many students should we plan for? How many students are going to be at each of the campuses that we know in terms of the capacity we should be planning for? Then we have facilities assessment. What is the condition of the current facility? We want to understand that so we understand what we're dealing with in terms of even things you can't see, underground utilities that are aged, all of those things come into play. And then the financial analysis, which is really, we can identify all the needs in the world, but how is it going to get paid for? So those are sort of the 4 tenets of a comprehensive master plan. Through all of that, and at the center of it really is stakeholder collaboration. So all of the groups that we interacted with, meeting with the board and understanding your goals, as Jim talked about. And then we take all of those needs as we lay them out over the site and we put some costs to them. We do want to understand where people's kind of hearts and minds lie in terms of prioritization because we know we can't accomplish everything all at once, as much as I would love to gift everyone a huge bag of money to be able to do so. And then that turns into our final campus plan recommendations. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say this is a very comprehensive process. When you look at all of these factors, they are the elements that affect the facilities. And then the financial analysis is the component where you can marry up dollars with priorities and match those up within the plan to give you that roadmap forward. There are a couple components, though, that really weren't part of the master planning process that we were looking at. The first was the high schools. They had already gone through a master planning process with their various architects, and they were in the implementation phases of the first scopes of work. Now, one thing you would expect to see is that master plan evolve as they learn more information and as they interact in more detail with the site stakeholders on a specific project. And so those evolutions were occurring. So the plan was that there would basically be an amendment to the master plan that would then incorporate the high school facilities with revised master plan diagrams for each campus based on what work has happened, what changes occurred from the original master plan for each campus that was anticipated, and then relook at the costs, subtracting out the work that has already been done just to show what's remaining. So that would have been an amendment to the plan. The other is the surplus sites. In discussions with the resource committee that was helping to guide us in the process, and where we really got into the weeds sometimes on more technical questions, the surplus sites really required a more unique process for them and a more in-depth kind of analysis than we had available during the master plan. There's also how many questions can you really address at one time? And since they wouldn't have been impacted very much by any first phases of work, they also, too, would be an amendment to the master plan once those sites were looked at.
So I will briefly walk through each of those components as we talked about. So from an educational vision perspective, we had an educational charrette with some teachers. We talked about this at the Facilities Master Plan Committee level. We talked about this with the Resource Committee. But some of the common themes we heard throughout the process were, again, I feel like we've said this a few times already, but shared facilities. Is there the ability to build a central facility that all schools can use? So more of a resource, and that might be something that are bigger, like a bigger performing arts center, for instance, that multiple campuses could go use for performances. So that was something that we heard and was talked about. Expanded learning opportunities. We definitely spent some time talking about early childhood education. This was kind of right in the throes of all the TK implementation and things like that. So how does the plan address all of that, as well as specialized facilities? Accessibility and safety came up as something that we talked about a bit. Updated classroom environments that provide flexibility, so knowing just how much technology changes the learning environment on a regular basis, how do you provide that kind of nimble nature in a classroom? And then the idea of welcoming schools and curb appeal, just sort of what as a neighbor of a school, or as you drop your child off, or as you engage with a site that you drive by, what does that start to look and feel like? Outdoor spaces, we have the gift of living in Southern California, and so how do those outdoor spaces reflect the ability to go in and outdoors? And if anything, I think COVID put a bigger highlight on that and the idea of fresh air and some of those things of how you develop those spaces. Athletic field and playground updates were talked about. Whole child support, so these were some of the things around wellness centers. How do you support private counseling spaces and student services that actually have spaces that are meant for them in terms of acoustically private and having those spaces versus oftentimes they're sort of found spaces. Multi-purpose rooms at all sites. I think we settled on the fact that that probably wouldn't happen, but certainly something that people spent a lot of time talking about. Just because I think, and I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like that was such a big discussion because it is where community kind of gathers, right? That is that community hub on a campus, and so that was really the impetus for a lot of those conversations. Whether that was an outdoor assembly or it happens indoors, it was the importance of being able to gather as a school community. STEAM and CTE, so some dedicated spaces that are well-equipped to handle those components, and then libraries. So, you know, knowing that libraries are sort of changing in terms of wanting access to both books and technology in terms of how that marriage happens. So from a facilities assessment standpoint, we had the opportunity to walk every single site and be able to do a visual look at each of the campuses. But maybe more importantly, we got to meet with the departments of maintenance and operations who they know these sites like the back of their hand. So really understanding needs. What are your biggest work orders? Where are the problem spots? Where do you have drainage issues? We were able to address all of those things to really have a comprehensive picture of the needs based on, especially with some of the ages. We interviewed district departments, we reviewed previous site assessment information, and so all of those went into the condition reports that you see for each site in the deliverable. And then last but certainly not least is the demographic data. And we spent a lot of time talking about demographics because it was a very interesting conversation. And so working with the district's demographer, they were able to provide us with provide the district a lot of information that they then provided to us. But this was always an interesting illustration in terms of the conversations and the things that we were hearing about movement in the district. These percentages really reflect the rate at which students are attending a school other than their school of residences. So you'll see in some of these, I mean, I think the highest one is like 56%, that there are some high percentages here in terms of attending a school other than the school that you live near. And so this was really interesting as we were learning more about how students move in and across the district.
And Lindsay made a good point there that it was the district's consultant. Very often, as part of a master plan, a district already has a demographer they've been working with a number of years, so it's rare that actually LPA would have that consultant under our umbrella. So the data was provided to us by the district's existing consultant. And getting into a little bit in the weeds, there was quite a few studies going on already in progress when we started the master plan, really looking at that movement of students and where were they actually going. So while those percentages tell you how many students, they don't tell you where and why and all the other things. And so this is just an example of some of the studies that were going on. You can zoom in on the next slide. This one is just taking the example of Lamson. All the purple dots throughout the map are students that are attending Lamson. And so you can see the number of students are quite a few of them are outside the attendance area. I think the percentage of the school is like 25 to 30% of students either moving outside, moving away from that school, but also coming in. The other circles being 1 mile, a radius from the campuses is really about the maximum walkable distance. It doesn't deal with traffic or roads, but it was just kind of a planning diagram talking about some of the challenges that could be faced in terms of transportation and how are these students all moving. But this really helped inform when we were trying to get to site capacities and getting to that target enrollment that we did. The district had done a lot of homework, so it made that discussion fairly easy to settle on either the 480, 420 and the 600 in terms of the elementary student enrollments. And it was verified by some of these demographic studies that have been done in the past. And it's also very interesting just to learn where exactly are all the various students going. And there was quite a bit of movement. I think this is some of the most movement we've seen other than Long Beach, USD, where the kids actually go everywhere. It's like a big scramble. So, yeah. So coming out of all of that, when we looked at the demographics, when we looked at the facilities assessment, when we looked at the educational program vision, there were some challenges. You've got older sites with aging infrastructure, particularly at the elementary and middle school levels. There hasn't been as much invested in terms of facilities improvements. Some sites are not educationally appropriate for the learning that could be taking place in the future, or how learning even takes place today. There's a projected decline in enrollment, and that's occurring basically throughout the state, even more so than I think when we were doing the plan. Districts surrounding you are rebuilding and rebranding their facilities and programs. So there's a competition going on for students as enrollments are declining. And also competition with private schools and other types of options for parents. And so it was all driving basically what first led to, I think, the district developing the EDGE strategic vision, and then from that leading to the master plan to implement the facilities aspect to that vision, or I should say bring that vision into facilities. So those were the challenges that we came out of this. I would say as you look to the future and implementing this plan, or what are the next steps with this plan, I'd go back a little bit and ask some of the big questions. Are the assumptions in this master plan correct? And is that strategic vision relevant? Is it something the district is moving forward with? And what are some of those other big things? Because I think that could impact some of the decisions that were made in the master plan, because they were based upon a very specific point in time. So even before getting to kind of looking at the next steps of priorities and implementing projects, maybe going back and I would say a challenge is to really re-examine and question, is this still relevant today? And what parts do we want to keep and what parts need to evolve?
Great point. So with all challenges come opportunities. So this was really, as we looked at that list of challenges Jim just walked through, this is really where that idea of how do you innovate, how do you compete, how do you retain, how do you give families choice, all of those big questions. How do you maybe prevent quite as much movement throughout the district? And so that's really when we started talking about this idea of the potential for magnet schools. So really understanding the success of McPherson at the time, the fact that they had a waiting list, that people were really drawn to the STEM program, the fact that it had a specific focus, The idea that it was a K-8 model, there was a lot of conversation even around K-8s and giving families that level of choice in terms of that experience for their child or children. And so then we started to really think about where are the best or where are the most appropriate locations to put these, and the idea of a magnet, and then we started visiting the ideas behind the academies. So how do you do certain options that are very much still have the movement happening to maybe go to certain programs, but also how do you offer some of those choices right within a district boundary? So that's where we started the presentation, with some of those planning assumptions of magnets being district-wide and academies being within a high school feeder.
All the magnets are K-8s.
And all the magnets are K-8s. Yes. So all of this information we just walked through, right? The facilities condition assessment, what age, what condition are the facilities in, the demographic report from Davis at the time, how many students are going to be arriving here in the future, how are we potentially augmenting capacity, because again, we're moving some of these campuses to a K-8 model, so where are they potentially coming from? How do we want to plan for those? How big should they be? How small should they be? What creates a great campus culture? And then ultimately the educational vision, which that's a whole, I'll call it chapter in the deliverable about kind of space by space, the ed specs of what a classroom actually functions as, what support spaces it has, descriptions of that. So it's really taking all of that information and overlaying that then on a specific site. So understanding how many kids are there, the condition of it, what the educational vision wants to overlay, and getting it specific to every single site. So that's where the site master plan development comes in.
And I would say the educational vision, the ed specs, is an aspirational document. You're not going to be able to obviously implement it in its full nature on every site based on the parameters that you might be existing in some of the existing spaces. But it gives you that idea of, if it was comprehensive, what were all the needs and what should it look like, so you can get as close to it as possible within the various facilities.
So those identified, or we just walked through sort of the three components of the four that we talked about earlier. So the funding piece was the piece that we did not go into great detail with in terms of what those funding sources would be, how much we could plan for, but that did not leave us without wanting to capture prioritization at that point in time in terms of, like we mentioned earlier, what are the greatest needs based on the different groups. So with each of these groups, we did online surveys and interviews with the principals, we had school site committees, we had teacher and staff surveys, parent surveys, the FMP committee, and then ultimately working with the board as well at the time. We asked each of these groups, you know, what are your top three priorities? Because we think we always want to come to all of you in meetings with data points. This is what people that are either working, living, breathing on these sites every day are saying. These are what parents are saying. We want to bring you some data to be able to inform what we're hearing, so that that can help you sort of in terms of what people are saying the highest needs are, to have that in the back of your mind as you're thinking through priorities yourself. So one of the things we did as a part of nearing the end of this process was we sat down with the FMPC, or the Facilities Master Plan Committee, and we asked them to sort of rank those overarching goals. And you'll see we sort of color-coded them to make it easier, and we also had the board at the time rank the overarching 7 goals. And the top 3, although in slightly different order, are completely aligned. In terms of retaining resident students being a big focus, providing educational options for students within their communities, that idea of choice, and then innovation in planning and programs. So a lot of the things that we were talking about throughout the master plan, about innovating, about providing choice, about providing distinctive and transformative programs, they were rising to the top near the end of the process as well. And then this gets into a little bit more detail, but the other piece of this is, as we do a cost estimate, we always do it sort of by scope categories to try to break it down from just a big number into chunks that can be looked at in more detail from an implementation standpoint. So we asked the FMP committee as well as the board to rank scope of work categories. And so the top 5 for the FMP are on the left, and where those started to equate when the board was asked on the right. Modernizing and reconfiguring aging classrooms was the top for everyone. There was a lot of alignment. I think the only place that there maybe wasn't was the assembly and food service. but student support and counseling. You know, I think the board had a strong recognition that modernizing and reconfiguring aging classrooms would need to kind of pair with existing building systems, toilets, things like that. And then just that understanding of what a pain point parking, drop-off, and entry can be for families, and things that you probably hear about regularly.
And toilets always rise to the top, too.
Toilets are always a topic. Hot button issue. So these were where we took the prioritization process in terms of that. So, oops, sorry. And then ultimately how this information was all organized into the deliverable, which is on the website and the district website, is we organized it into sections or chapters. The chapter 1 is ultimately the introduction and purpose, so just giving an overview of the purpose of the document, the background, who participated in the process, an overview of the process itself. Section 2 really gets into the planning and considerations, so some of those things we started talking about towards the beginning of the meeting, of the overarching planning assumptions, the timeline, data that influenced it, the tiered approach, what tiers are and aren't is in there. And then section 3 is all about the educational specifications, so the vision in terms of outlining all of the various spaces. Section 4 is delves into all the cost. So how we organized it around scope of work categories to make it easier when it comes to implementation, cost summaries. This captures all the stakeholder priorities in that section too. So there's more detail in the deliverable than we're trying to summarize tonight. Section 5 is a section that has every campus in there. So it has the site assessment for each campus. It has an existing site diagram because, again, it's a point in time. So they might, you know, what they're labeled back in 2021 might be different than how spaces are used today. So you're kind of comparing what it was to what it could be from a master plan diagram. And then right in that chapter 2, or right in that packet for each site, is the cost summary specific to that. And these were all organized by the feeder areas. And then last but not least is the appendix, which really had the demographics report that we pulled information from, all of the FMP committee presentations, the schedule for the process, and the detailed cost estimate. So kind of diving into the weeds more than the bigger summary cost items.
So all the tools are there within the master plan. If you want to go into prioritization, and if you want to start looking at projects, the data points are there to help you understand what do the various stakeholder groups say, perhaps inform decisions in terms of how do you look at priorities, and what do you then begin to marry up with the funding that could be available. To us, a master plan is something that has that roadmap forward. It has the financial piece with the prioritization that matches the first phases of funding. Generally, I would call something that doesn't quite have that piece yet a needs assessment, because what we've done today is we've given you, here's what all the needs are based on what we've heard at the time and the program vision of the district, as well as the interaction with the stakeholders, and put a cost to that. And so the next step is basically identifying those funding resources and then doing that prioritization process, at least for the first phases of work.
So to wrap up, before we will obviously open to any questions that we've created for you, is in terms of next steps. So where we left off when we wrapped up the process with the board at the time, this 6/24 meeting was really our big presentation of the draft of it, and then July was really more of a formality of adopting the plan. So this was one where we talked at the time about facilities planning next steps. Jim mentioned earlier that marrying in the high school and the surplus properties to have a really comprehensive district-wide plan was one next step identified. Continuing to look at all the data, right? The demographics were a big portion of the data that drove a lot of the master plan. I mean, the movement, as Jim said, there's not a lot of districts that sort of have that. And so it was really interesting to learn and work with that in terms of the approach we took. Development of a funding plan, strategies, and leveraging of local resources. So like we've said, identifying what money might be available that you could prioritize projects to, which leads to the next, which is kind of prioritizing project scenarios to match those funds. And then implementation planning for rolling it out. So as funding becomes available, it's kind of identifying, well, what can we get state matching for? What could we do this for? And being able to prioritize with some of those things in mind as well. So those were the next steps from there. I think, where do we go from here in terms of what we've learned about where you are right now? You are working on a resource optimization process right now. So identifying the work that may be an outcome of that in terms of the impacts of those choices would be something that you want to consider moving forward. Certainly funding considerations, right? We know in terms of state funding right now, I think most of the modernization funds have been spoken for with the current bond, but new construction funds are still available for applications. But I think one of the biggest new things that's come out is this idea of the Prop 2 requirements that are going to come into effect starting next year, which will affect master plans. So the expectation is that we comply every 5 years with updated information. And we can walk through those requirements anytime you would like, but there are sort of 9 components to it, some of which are already in this existing plan, and some of which are more deferred maintenance, inventory, things like that, that we would work with the district on identifying in terms of your facilities. And then project prioritization. So really understanding that idea of funding. The image on the right is something we've done with boards when funding has been identified, and it's really tiny print, but like there's 2 sort of markers on the side, one where they thought this is the funding we have available now, and this is if we were to be able to be successful with a future bond, and they sort of prioritized for both scenarios. But this took scope of work categories and really started to, we call it like filling the thermometer. So it's a very visual exercise to understand priorities married with funding. So lots of tools in the toolbox to be able to do that project prioritization, but it always starts with sort of what type of funds might be available to do so. So with that, I am sure we've created a lot of questions, so.
Yes, thank you very, very much. And as Lindsay and was mentioning in regards to the funding sources, that's kind of what led to today's presentation. As we know, our facilities master plan has expired, so we do need to upgrade it in order to be able to qualify for matching funds. However, we wanted to make sure to not put the cart before the horse and really think about how can we make sure that we're using this as a roadmap, but really as a realistic roadmap and something that, based on what we saw with the information that was presented, looking at, are these assumptions still the assumptions that we're working off? Are our priorities still the same? And being really ready to implement something that comes back to us that is actually workable. One of the things that we talked about is realistic versus just wants. But what is it that we can do to make sure that we come back with a plan that is modified to really be more realistic than just necessarily wants because we don't have all of the funding, but how can we start some of that? So we wanted to make sure that we brought this to you as we're coming back to you in terms of looking at some of the next steps. And again, with that emphasis, we have our Resource Optimization Coalition, making sure that we're using that information to be able to create some clear directives in terms of some of the next steps. I think when I worked with the team in terms of putting this together and talking about what are some lessons that you've learned, as you've not only worked with our district, but other districts in regards to why the implementation doesn't happen. I know a past board president trustee on Monday mentioned about the fact that the facilities master plan stays on a shelf and doesn't come out. We want to make sure it's coming out. And so what is it that now that we refine this plan, what can we put in place to ensure that we actually have some realistic timelines? And one of the big things is the first is the identification of funding. And so I know that the board has made some commitments in looking at putting some funding towards campus improvement. And so with those commitments, do we now look at those different priorities and say, how can we spread some of those commitments into those areas that is realistic? We're not going to see it all, but we're very clear about these are some of the next steps, because those were some of the lessons that I think we learned as, we're reviewing, because there has been 5 years. And as Trustee Vane at the beginning asked, well, this was in place in 2021. What happened? We also know that there were a lot of competing factors. A lot of other projects came about as well, too. So, and I know that this wasn't necessarily mentioned because it was not part of the plan, but we also had pools that needed to be repaired. So again, you've got competing factors, you've got funding, different things that are taking place. So it's really us being able to, before we move forward, we've got to do this just for compliance, for matching. Really, we want to make sure that we're coming with a clear plan of what it is and using all of the steps that we're currently doing with our resource optimization to be able to, and that has been the discussion we've been having to ensure that we do come back with something that's with clear actions.
Well, thank you very much for this in-depth and absolutely historical accounting of what's happened. Many of us were not on the board at that time, so we are going to rely heavily on past President Erickson, on Vice President Yamasaki, and of course, in her absence, Anna Page, to help us sift through some of these things. But we're thankful. I'd like to open it up for questions at this time for anyone. Past President Erickson.
I just want to do a huge sigh right now, like, because when this process started, I was a baby trustee. I hadn't been on the board as long as you guys have. I had been on the board for like a few months. And I was so excited about this, like just beyond like a little baby, I was so excited about it. And you all did such an amazing job. And the board at the time, we sort of had a switch on the board in 2020. It's hard to believe that we had a meeting on March 3rd and then 17 days later we shut down for COVID. And the fact that you pulled all of this off, it obviously lengthened the timeline, but the fact that you pulled all of this off during that time was just like an act of God. I mean, it was amazing that you got it all done. And as board members, we were so determined to make sure that it was comprehensive and that you were using those demographics, making it truly comprehensive and comparing it to the EDGE that we had just done that earlier that year as well, the strategic initiative. It was the first time we had done a strategic initiative, I think in like 20 years or something. And so historically, it makes me sad that our board lost its vision for a period of time because we were so going on the right path towards this, this is for students. This is what creates safe spaces. This is what creates the best programming. This is where we should be going as a board. This should be our priority, not some of the things that became a priority. We lost focus, and I really, truly want to bring our board back and refocus on these things that are so important. There's so much I can say, and I'm not going to because I'm going to, anyway. Prop 2, is this compliant with Prop 2 right now?
Not currently.
Okay.
So they just finished the committee process, which there's no more comments happening at the state level in terms of the Prop 2 compliance. So essentially, in fact, it just was presenting on a webinar last Thursday about all of this. So there are 9 components to it, which I'm happy to share that with Salema, and she can share with you. This does, while we're going to sort of hit a time expiration piece where there may need to be components updated, like you get a demographics report probably every year. So that's things we can appendicize in terms of what that is. But there are components in this that will still comply maybe with minor updates. And then there are other pieces that are more about inventory, deferred maintenance plans, capital budgeting, funding resources, things like that.
And a lot of that has changed over the last 5 years.
Yes.
We have done a lot of deferred maintenance. We don't hear as much about bathrooms anymore because that was all we ever heard about in 2019 was bathrooms. Thank goodness we've updated a lot of those and a lot of other things. So there's definitely things that the district has done. I think we invested, just in deferred maintenance, probably about $30 million in the last 5 or 6 years and various programs and things like that. Plus we had the bond measure, which obviously only affects the high schools. But just as a matter of historical reference, this truly was supposed to be, it was intended to be at the time when Trustee Page, Trustee Moffitt, Trustee Yamasaki, and I were doing this, this was going to be our roadmap. And it was never set in stone, but it was a roadmap towards how are we going to get here. And I know we started to identify some funding sources as well with Dave Rivera, because obviously it's $1 billion worth of needs. In our last budget, we set aside $40 million, so it's a good start, but obviously we are going to have to be doing more to be able to achieve everything. But some of the other things that have changed is we've had this conversation, the resource optimization. So there may be schools that it's not going to, it won't, that's not where it's going to go. The resources may need to go to what I talked about the other day, which is if we're going to consolidate a school, we put those resources there. And that's actually consistent with the facilities master plan, with this idea of sharing and really ensuring that we're optimizing our fiscal resources to the greatest extent possible. So in terms of Prop 2 is going to be what's required to ask for state matching funds. Is
Correct.
that, am I understanding that
That's
correctly?
correct.
Okay. And then obviously for any kind of bond measure we were to run, we want to, at least from my perspective, because I was obviously active on the first bond measure, one of the things that's really important is us actually using the resources that we have, which again, it's not $1 billion, but whatever we can do, to at least make those efforts towards everything we can do. So it is looking at at everything. I was interested in the, one of the things that we talked about, a priority was to keep students in their home schools, in their communities, in their, and really creating these magnets, not magnet academies, but just attraction for students in their community so they weren't going off and going to a school 3 miles away. And that really was a priority, and I hope that that remains a priority because I think that that's something that is really important. Of course we respect choice, but we want to make that choice in your community. We want that to be the choice people make. It is important to know why people leave our schools. I agree with that. Ms. Robin is over there, and she made that public comment the other night. And so agree, we need to figure out some of those things. This obviously is not addressing those needs, but this is more of a comprehensive facilities issue. But hopefully those programs that we create will be based on a lot of those data points that come from various things. Some of the interviews you did, and maybe some other data points like what programs are drawing people? Why are they not staying at their home school? That kind of thing I think is important that we consider as well. And obviously the assumptions, the relevancy, whatever's changed since then. But I do hope that we can move forward, even if it's on 1 or 2 projects, just to get moving and really embrace this, because this is our opportunity right now to do this. And as we know, boards change and the focus can change again. And while we have the focus, we need to take advantage of it and do it and get our schools cleaned up, safe, get our programming what we think it should be, and commit to it. And so I hope we do. That's it.
Trustee Thomas.
First of all, thank you very much. It's funny because there's a neighboring district that I so happen to work for that we also need $1 billion worth of work done. Boggles my mind, but so I follow and attend meetings there. I really don't have a lot to say other than thank you.
$1 billion 2025 money. We need more than that now.
Yes,
That was
it was
2021
in
money.
2021 dollars.
Yeah.
So.
And I was going to say that there's an article back in 2020 in regards to the needs statewide, $100 billion in terms of just statewide. So, and unfortunately, we don't receive enough funding for facilities, and that is why, again, trying to maximize in those bond monies. But we have to reserve at least 3% for restricted routine. But in terms of other facility needs, we have to look for other resources.
And just, I mean, I want to say it because if anybody's watching this, we don't receive funds from the state for facilities other than by way of matching funds. There's a few resources, but otherwise we have to use our surplus property funds. We have to get bonds passed. We don't get money from the state to do these things. And that's why when you say OUSD didn't invest for so many years, that's the same thing all over the state. Because what's the average age of a building across the state is like 30 years old or something like that. You probably know that better than I do. But
Yeah, more than that.
it's buildings are old in California. As you said, $100 billion statewide is necessary. So we're not alone in it, but this is our challenge in our community, and we're going to do it. So.
Trustee Pelley?
Well, thank you again for this report. I was on this committee way back then. I was a principal at Fletcher, so I was pretty invested in that whole thing. And I just have to say, for those who don't know or weren't around, it was really, truly comprehensive. I mean, this shows a little bit of that, but and COVID stuck in the middle of it was tough, and that had to do with a lot of the changes, I think, more focused on other things at the time. But we kept the meetings going. We were creative. This picture of all of us looking like we're sitting in stadium seats or whatever that was. I remember doing that online. That was funny. But you guys did a really good job of just kind of keeping us focused as much as we could. And I was looking back at the pictures of the variety of the people from the community that were on this committee. I mean, it literally, there were people from all different places and areas, and it was a really comprehensive thing. One more thing for Dr. Perez to do is to kind of remind everybody, what went into this, because I think a lot of people now may be like, well, I wasn't on that, and I think we need to remember that we need to bring this back to life. Dust it off, get it off the shelf. I think it is now. That's something we've been talking a lot about, and utilize it. I don't really have any questions. I'm just writing all kinds of notes about all the different pieces now that we've kind of added on, and the different parts that we need to put into this plan. And it keeps getting more and more complicated, but in a good way, because I think this board really is very focused on getting some things done. So thank you.
Trustee Yamasaki?
Thank you. It's good to see you. It's been a long time, but I recognize all your faces. You haven't changed much at all. So, and thank you for coming back and doing this out of retirement. So we really appreciate you being here tonight. So we started this process in 2019. I joined the board in 2016. Gosh, I can't believe it. It's been almost 10 years. And I remember when it was just a thought. And so I want to recognize Dr. Marie Hansen for her vision. I want to recognize Trustee Kathy Moffitt back then. She really pushed us through. This is one of her priorities. In looking at the timeline, it says that we kicked off the meeting in September, and then obviously COVID happened in March. But between September and March, a lot of work was done. I was also on the committee, and I remember you had extensive meetings, bringing in stakeholders after stakeholders and different groups, and it was an amazing process to watch. And what I thought was really important is that we were trying to listen to the voices of our families, our principals, our students, and so it was so comprehensive. I was blown away by it. And the work didn't stop, and we continued with it. And that's why I thought this meeting was really important to do. I pushed it behind the scenes because I thought, we have new trustees, we have new administrators, and I didn't want this to be buried on a shelf and dusted off and looked at and said, what was this? But this is something that we need to rely on. This is the foundation of what we will be doing in the future. And obviously, master plans have to be flexible. I remember hearing that. And I think that this will serve as a great place to start now that we're doing the resource optimization committees. And things change, laws change, and the dynamics of so many things have changed, and so we have to be, I hate using that word, nimble, and work towards the future. But didn't want these voices to be lost. And not to mention all the money that we spent on it. And hours, time. It was, I have to commend you, because I remember when we approved it to March, it was just so much work was done in that short period. And there was no downtime, so I appreciate that. You answered my question about Prop 2. I was going to ask the same thing. And let's see. The one thing I did want to mention is it was really interesting to see the top priorities for each stakeholder groups. And I don't see it in here, but I thought maybe the board members should see that. So maybe we can put it in the Friday letter just to, is it?
I believe it's
Oh,
in the
that
larger,
one.
right,
Okay.
correct.
All right. So thank you. Or I don't know if you want to pull it out separately. But I just want to thank you for all your work, and it's good to see you all again.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Sierra Vane. I am a newish parent and new to the board, and I have a lot of questions. I'd like to make a suggestion to OUSD. I wonder if we could have a whiteboard somewhere, because is that a whiteboard? I have a diagram that I made of what I think I heard here, so I just want to make sure that I have an accurate understanding of what has been and where we're going. Yes. Okay, so imagine you fold your paper in half. On one half, 1A is that we have a strategic plan for the district, period, like, because ours expired. So one first thing is that we need a strategic plan. And 1B of that is that we need a graduate profile, right? Because it seems like before we can proceed on any of this, we need to have that. And then 2A is that the board needs goals. There's board goals in here, but this is a different board, and those goals might be different. And then 2B, so like this, is that there was a facilities master plan, and I don't know why we didn't call them goals as well. So the board has goals, and then the facility master plan has guiding principles. And then those things were not the same. And then those were put in the categories of the 4 things, and out came of that priorities, also called priorities. And then there was a ranking. And then that ranking had some similarities, but some differences as well. Okay, so that's step 3 is the priorities ranking. And then after that, we have a step 4, which would be step 4A would be execute what we can, right? And then step B would be whatever we can't, we might have a conversation about a bond. Okay, so that's one side. And then on the other side, right, so simultaneously to this, right, we have 1A would be a facilities audit, 1B would be resource optimization and also asset management. 1C is the dollars component, like what exactly do we have, what is possible within a bond, what Proposition 2 is, that whole conversation. And 1D would be demographic information, because we have this comprehensive report that was done, but also now it's different. And so, and we recently received some of that data with the coalition work that has been going on. And then for me, 2 would be research. So what is Long Beach doing if they're similar? You know, is that a successful model, you know, for open enrollment, or is it not? So it's not clear to me that the goal is to keep everyone near their neighborhood school if the type of magnet or academy that they want isn't in their neighborhood, right? And so also, what does the science say about what is good for our students? Are K through 8 schools good for students? Like, does that help their learning, or does it not? Or is it just simply that some parents like that and some parents don't? Also, magnet schools, right? Is that good for students and good for their learning? You know, because what I'm not seeing in this is what does our scientific research say about, you know, what is good for students and what have other places observed as positive outcomes, right? So for me, I would like to make educated choices based on that sort of information. Also, a part of this would be, you know, how far can people drive? Like ultimately, if you're talking about an open enrollment district, then transportation has to be the key question. So for me, what I'm thinking about is, okay, if in my feeder pattern, my kid's magnet is biomedical, whatever, right, engineering, then what if I don't want that? You know, so how far am I willing to drive, and do we have the transportation mechanisms to take me and my kids to some other school where I would like their magnet, right? And that's the problem, is that if we don't offer everything at all of the schools, right, and we do this sharing concept, then transportation just has to be a key component of it. And so I don't see how we move forward without like really prioritizing the dynamics of our very large, multiple cities, you know, spanning district. And then for me, so moving into 3 on the one side, right? So 3A would be like immediately what can we do? And that includes all of the deferred maintenance that we're not doing, right? And then the inventory component. And then 3B for me, and I don't know if this was in, I don't have the binder, right? Definitions of things. So I learned today what exactly is the difference between an academy and a magnet, and what exactly is there a definition of a multi-purpose room or not? And you know, we also have like our own district definitions of what a librarian is and what their job is. So then you would want to have the library space match with what the librarian's, you know, duty is for their job, right? So for me, this is what I'm sort of envisioning. And do I have that right? Kind of where?
Yes, I'm very impressed that you just summarized trying to summarize a 2-year process into a presentation that did not feel like you were drinking from a fire hose, which it probably still felt like you were drinking from a fire hose, was an interesting challenge. The fact that you were able to summarize it in that way is impressive. Some of the answers to a few of your end questions are in there. A library is defined in the ed specs, that's section 3. The planning assumptions about what an academy versus a magnet is, that would be in planning
I feel like we have some gate magnet academies going on here, and
Yes.
you know.
We did have a question about research. Actually, I have that sort of behind the slides. This was a question, because I know you guys have had things that came up previously. Why K-8s, magnets, and academies? Where's the data supporting these? This is a question from one of the board meetings. I did try, by the way, in the presentation to cite which board meeting sources these were from, because I know Salema had put together a packet of all the board presentations, I believe, for each of you. So that's why I tried to tie that. So yes, perfect. So there's some of this in here that was talked about during the process, but no, you summarized that. It's complex, to say the least.
Yeah, it's one of the most
We
complicated
didn't have
things.
this in advance, so I was kind of like processing it as, you know.
That was excellent. It's one of the most complicated things we do, the master planning. And so to be able to grasp all those various parts and understand how they all interrelate is
I would like to take action and move forward. So I'm just trying to understand like what exactly occurs first and what should be occurring simultaneously between all of these various things that we have going on.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of not wanting to, we know for compliance reasons, we need to update this plan so that we're able to apply for matching funds. However, as I mentioned earlier, is making sure that it's a strategic implementation and looking at, and so as the board now has, you know, we've got the Resource Optimization Coalition and looking at are potentially some schools going to be impacted by it? And I know that one of the requests was that money for campus modernization be put aside for those, but also looking, as Lindsay and Jim mentioned earlier, there are categories, maybe looking at just some of the categories and saying, we can't do this all, but maybe under the category of safety, we can do this because we have this much funding, and what could that potentially look like at each school? Is it more of the beautification versus actually going into the infrastructure? A lot of the detailed plans in the facility master plan, as I mentioned earlier, are more transformational. So when you look at each of the schools, you're ranging anywhere from 40 million to 70 million in terms of the needs of each of the schools. Well, we know we can't do all of that for all of our schools, but really working with them and saying, okay, we know we need to refine this. Come to us also with an idea of what you think are some steps that we can, and let's start putting it in some timeline, because a lot of this we won't see till 20, 30 years from now, but we can start seeing pieces of it as we're moving forward. However, as they mentioned earlier, part of the recommendation of that is, as we work through the Resource Optimization Coalition, really seeing which of our schools are going to be impacted by that, so that then we can take those next steps.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this was a high level. This was a high level presentation. This was not, didn't go into all the details that we actually had at the time. And all of the work that was done, because it was extremely comprehensive. But there may be things that have changed, and nobody has ever said that this was set in stone. So when we talk about moving forward, we've always known we don't have $1 billion. We'll never have $1 billion. So if we take a couple of projects and then we do those specific studies on those specific projects, whatever the questions may be, because they're not universal, not every school is going to be a K-8. So we just need to know, like, are we thinking about doing, I'm just making up a school, Crescent. Okay, let's look at what the master plan says about that. Let's go into all of those details and those studies about that as it relates to that school. To me, that seems like the better approach. Rather than trying to have all the answers to everything ahead of time on $1 billion worth of projects, we cannot get there. And it's not realistic anyway. So however we do it, I just want to make sure we do it, we get it done. We get something done. And it may be 5 years from now, but that we move towards a goal of getting something done with the resources we have, and don't get so caught up that we just stall out, because as I said,
to be clear,
the
we're
board
not gonna
changes,
go
boards
through
can
this whole thing.
change, and then our priority, a new board's priority could be banning books. So we need to be the board that's going to prioritize this at this time. That's my concern. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
So what I'm hearing is that some of you went through this process, right? And our plan is to not do that again. Right.
We would not recommend doing a full process again, but instead doing.
Like, what parts are we going to do again,
Well, because the high school's not part of, the facilities master plan, that's one thing that we actually have to incorporate in order to be able to apply for matching funds, because that's something that's new as part of Prop 2 in terms, since we're a unified district. So we do need to make sure that we bring that into the plan. So just looking at some of those requirements with Prop 2 are one of the recommendations that we would make, that we would ensure are part of the next steps when it comes to updating the facilities master plan. However, we have a good base. We have a good base as a roadmap to be able to move forward, and now it's enhancing from here and then looking backwards and developing some potential timelines and some next steps. And that's why, as I mentioned earlier, we don't want them yet to fully move forward with it, but get the input that we need to, and taking that input from the resource optimization, from the board, for those next steps.
Dr. Menares.
Trustee Bain, it might be helpful for you to know. So so this was just to give an overview, because as I'm learning, we had this amazing facilities master plan, and we're working with the Resource Optimization Coalition. Some of what we started to say we needed to work with them on is actually in this plan. So wanted to bring you up to speed at a very high level again, just so that when we start talking with the Resource Optimization Coalition, we asked them to either log in or come tonight, and we didn't meet with them Tuesday, so that we didn't take 2 nights of their week, so that they're starting to know what happened before. Then on the January 22nd board meeting, the board just took action on Monday night to move money on our committed funds for facilities. So on our next regularly scheduled board meeting, we will have a deferred maintenance presentation and sharing some recommendations on how we would recommend going forward with that money that the board just took action on. That will be some of it, obviously not all of it, but in alignment with what we have on from the facilities master plan, but also what we have in line with the deferred maintenance that we just keep track of and how we can potentially accelerate some things while we're doing that. So it's all this simultaneous play going on, right? Then we're also, yes, just finishing up the listening and learning. We'll be bringing those themes forward. And our next step is to refine our graduate profile and our strategic roadmap. Goal is to have that done by the end of this school year so that we can move into that for next year. Though all these moving pieces need to be on separate parallel tracks right now so that we can bring them together. Not waiting for one to be done before we start something else, because our children can't wait and our families can't wait. So I hear your urgency, we feel it too, and we're working on all of it, and then we'll bring it together. What I would ask of any board member is allow us the time to work through that, and then we'll bring more actionable things forward. We've got to bring you all up to date, we've got to bring other people up to date, and then we've got to start to merge and bring the 405, the 55, and the 91 together.
So what I'm having a hard time understanding is, was this a facilities plan for like 2020? Or was it a facilities plan for 2020 to 2025 and now it's like expired? Or, you know, does a normal district that, you know, is looking at their facilities have like a regular one every year, or, you know?
It's master plan's updated usually about every 3 to 5 years. CDE has always kind of talked about that kind of cadence. I think we've only ever worked with one district where they actually had the dollars to implement everything that they wanted in their plan, and this was a few years ago when costs were a lot lower. Fun fact, Canyon Rim Elementary was only $3.7 million construction back in 1996. So you can see what costs have gone up exponentially for a variety of reasons. So the master plan is capturing the needs, and you bite it off in bite-sized chunks.
So
And
like
you-
at the time, when was it intended that we would like go through this again?
Generally, the planning processes for the update are less comprehensive than the initial because you're only dealing with specific topics that you need to update within the plan, as long as the assumptions made within that plan are still relevant.
I will also add, from a demographic standpoint, we only have as much data as we're able to get. They used to be somewhat more confident in a 10-year projection, but the way things are going, nobody provides more than a 7-year projection anymore, and sometimes we even push them on that. So I would say in terms of data, you really only have, so if we were using the demographics from 2020, for instance, to do these plans, it was probably projected enrollment through 2027, which is what we started to use as the planning process. So I realize we're throwing a lot of various years at you. California Department of Education tends to say you should revisit this so it doesn't sit on a shelf every 3 to 5 years, just in terms of an overarching, you need to make sure your goals continue to match what you're trying to implement and do with your facilities. But from a true planning standpoint of data, demographics are really the dictation because we can only project out, and that's a methodical process done by demographers, but it's also, you know, it doesn't always prove true. So it's only as good as the data we have.
I guess like, so in my head, it's a living document, but really it's not because we don't revise it. And then it's like the deferred maintenance part is a living, and then this one is
living to the extent that as you accomplish projects, those come off the list and come off the $1 billion need list, right?
Our deferred maintenance list was developed somewhat from this too, because when we did the plan, we identified different levels of work that needed to be done. And so when the deferred maintenance goes in, they look at it and go, okay, we saw that this was a priority at that school. And so they would do that.
Then like something breaks, right?
And I would say yeah, sometimes like, you have to be flexible, and then you have to
that was one
do
of the
HVAC, or you know, and things happen. Like we didn't know about COVID funding, and that changed things into this direction.
Can I just,
sorry. Or we also had declining enrollment. Like we don't know, so we have to adjust. But this provides us a base to work with.
I think, just in my head, I think of this as, this is a huge resource we have now, and it's based on needs. There is data that needs to be updated, but it's not a plan where you open up and go, okay, this is everything we're going to do. This, you know, yeah, I mean, every school is saying, we need this, we need this. And instead of just trying to, okay, well, I guess we'll do them, or this looks like we could do this, there needs to be some kind of a plan. Okay, what are the true needs? What do people want? You know, what, and that's what this was. It was just a study to really look at when we want to start. As we said, the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, that doesn't say what's going to happen first. A lot of it's going to depend on what happens with Peralta, what happens with, you know, any kind of funding, what we decide priorities are going to be with the resource optimization coalition. So it's just this huge resource we have now. So when we say, okay, it looks like we may be looking at this school, let's look and see what the specs are. So it's not necessarily something we're just going to open up and do everything. I wish we could, you know. And the needs have probably changed. You know, when we get to that point, we don't have to go exactly by this book because there are new people at the sites, there are new needs there. But it's a really good starting point that's based on needs, not just everybody wants something, but what's really practical. And then to have a district scope to say, well, everybody wants a multipurpose room, but because that's probably not possible, what can we do? You know, so it's just a great resource that we are going to use now. Does that make sense?
You hit the nail right on the head, because FMP is really a framework, and it's not meant to be an instruction manual from IKEA, for example. It's very linear. So it's more of a point in time. And so, yes, it was done in 2019, completed in 2020, but the needs in every school district change very constantly. And so there is a need for flexibility, and that's what a master plan allows. And clearly, we sense a lot of consternation from the board about maybe this FMP sat on the shelf and collected dust for a little bit, but well, there's that, but afterwards, I mean, but it's not atypical also. We have a lot of clients that are faced with the same sense of maybe paralysis because there's so much need that is just described here, and you don't have all the funding available to address everything. And that's why there is a need to maybe help prioritize, define what the priorities are. But then you also have to achieve consensus as far as what are those things that we need to address first.
Can I ask really quick, since clearly, I mean, we only have a couple of us that were on the board over the last few years. So when we do that update on the deferred maintenance, could you maybe go back over the last decade and just kind of give a brief update as to what has happened so that everybody is on the same page and understands what we've kind of done?
Happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. It doesn't have to be super detailed, or
Just
maybe it does, but
high
just
level
enough to be able to let us know kind of some of these things have changed and we have done work on them. So that would be good to know.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So I'm thankful for this opportunity to meet and to have this discussion. I think it's important not just for us, but for the viewing community to get an understanding of what we're trying to do and what we're going to end up achieving over the course of the next, several years. We're optimistic that, as you mentioned, the framework is going to maintain what it is, but there are some new adjustments that had to be made with the inclusion of the high schools and things of that nature. So it's an exercise in patience, but we have to hurry up and kind of wait and then get things going as we continue to go. But the questions that Trustee Vane asked are very relevant and are emblematic of how challenging it is for a new board member to come onto a board and to start something like this. So I appreciate all of her questions. I had several questions, but nothing as voluminous as hers. I mean, it was outstanding. But I will say this in conclusion. There's so much work that we have to do, and I'm grateful for the previous board members who put forth that effort, and I'm appreciative of you all for the expertise and the professionalism you've had. And I say that in all sincerity, but in conclusion, we're going to get more information. We're going to have more opportunities to really make these decisions. We're going to continue to engage not just each other, but our cabinet, our superintendent, in order to get us the best information in the most timely manner so that we can move forward as quickly as possible. So hearing no other questions, I want to thank you all very much. And we want to conclude this meeting at, I'm going to call it 7:44 p.m. Thank you.